at all levels of the organization. Such will come to an absolute end once the leadership has been announced at all levels. We will not tolerate insubordination and mutiny, and will isolate elements that seek to destabilize our movement. We call on all members of Mkhonto as a party to join first to avoid and stay away from the demons of gatekeeping and factionalism. There will be several members and leaders who will join Mkhonto as a party and will be assigned leadership responsibilities at all levels. We command all structures to abide by the decisions of upper structures.
The DA says the NPA owes the public an explanation on why it decided not to prosecute anyone in relation to the crimes committed on President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala farm in Bela-Bela, Limpopo. Yesterday, the Director of Public Prosecutions in Limpopo said in a statement that the decision was taken after investigations revealed that there was no prospect of a successful prosecution. Former State Security Agency DG Arthur Frazier had lodged a criminal complaint against Ramaphosa in 2022. DA leader John Steenhuisen, who occupies a cabinet position in the GNU, says the party is committed to ensuring that the rule of law is upheld.
The NPA will be summoned by our members on the Justice Portfolio Committee in Parliament to come and explain their decision. I think that there does need to be greater explanation of the decision. I think that when a decision like this is made, and it has obvious implications that reach right the way to the very top of government, that there does need to be greater information that is provided. And I believe that the Justice Portfolio Committee in Parliament should be the place where the NPA come and share with those who are exercised with conducting oversight of them, are able to understand the decisions there.
The EFF in the Free State says it intends to open a case of corruption against Premier Makwin Letsoha Mathai and her husband, the Mangaung Metro Speaker Lawrence Mathai. Yesterday, the opposition party in the province said that there was a leaked message from a business person who had allegedly paid the couple millions of rand in bribes to secure a road contract in Tweespruit. The EFF says the contract has since been terminated. Part of the alleged bribe was used to buy a car for the couple and to help with transport at the ANC Women's League conference. The EFF says the contractor was appointed when his company was under business rescue. Basic Education says the shortage of markers for the upcoming matric exams will not compromise the exams. This follows concerns raised by the exams quality assurance body Umalusi over marking staff shortages. History, English home language, Afrikaans first and additional language, primarily within language paper 3, are the subjects that will be impacted by the shortage. Matriculants will sit for their first paper in 10 days. The department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says contingencies are in place to address Umalusi's concerns.
We are going to second staff that work in other directorates in the departments to ensure that we close the gaps that are there. So there will be no compromise to the examinations. Yes, it's a temporary measure, but going forward, once the minister has met with the Minister of Finance and National Treasury will then have a view in terms of how we move forward. But it is correct that we need to attend to this particular matter.
Friends and classmates of the Soweto children who died after eating snacks that allegedly contained poison have paid moving tributes. A memorial service for the 5 learners was held in Naledi today. The 5 children were between the ages of 6 and 10. It's alleged they consumed contaminated snacks bought from a foreign-owned spaza shop. Their deaths led the community of Soweto to go on the rampage and close spaza shops. Some of the deceased learners' classmates spoke at the memorial.
Greetings to all of you. Your lives were a blessing to us. Now your memories are a treasure to us. Njabulo, you are one of a kind, energetic, funny, and happy soul.
Zinhle, you were smart, cute, and also friendly.
Karabo, you were naughty and funny, full of jokes and love.
You are loved beyond words and you will be missed beyond measure.
And a UN source says Israeli forces have for a second day fired at an observation post belonging to the UN's peacekeeping mission in South Lebanon, wounding 2 soldiers. It's the 4th time in recent days that Israeli troops have fired at UN-filled bases. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres had said that Israel's firing on UN peacekeepers is a violation of international humanitarian law. The BBC's Jonathan Head.
What we've heard from the UN, the 3 incidents that happened in the last 48 hours, is the UN saying that they were deliberately shot at. This is not crossfire. We've seen from these Israeli airstrikes how accurate they can be, so no one thinks that these are accidents. Israel has made the point that the UN's posts happen to be in areas where they are fighting Hezbollah. They've warned the UN to leave. The UN has said, no, we should not have to leave. We should be able to be in our bases and you should be able to leave us alone.
The top story at 3 o'clock, the MK party has lamented what it has termed parallel structures within the organization. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
In sports this hour, Bavuma ruled out of first test match against Bangladesh. Bruce urges his charges to not undermine Congo and Fritz into Shanghai semis with win over Goffin. More details at 3:30.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. With only 5 contestants left in the competition, the heat is on. This week, they must prepare a family feast with the help of a sous chef who also happens to be their parent. It's a big challenge, but the reward is even bigger. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
South African Airways is expanding in the DRC. We now offer direct flights from Johannesburg to Lubumbashi, the heart of the DRC's mining hub. Our convenient arrival time allows seamless connections to key regions like Ndola and the Copper Belt, opening up new growth opportunities. Traders can benefit from our generous baggage allowance, while SAA's superior aircraft belly capacity ensures your cargo reaches most parts of Congo on the same day. Book now at flysaa.com or contact your travel agent. South African Airways, connecting Africa to the world, one flight at a time.
The University of Johannesburg ladies plan to conquer the morning and secure a crucial 3 points for breakfast. But Richmond United believe it is about time for them to rub shoulders with teams in the top half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. UJ Ladies FC versus Richmond United Ladies FC on Saturday, 12 October at 9 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, being a Friday, I went to mosque, rushed from the mosque to come here on air, and reflected on 2 things. In fact, 3 things. One is that story on the news about the MK party talking about parallel structures within the MK. Goodness, what does that mean? And what does this mean for the party going forward? And then I also thought about that accident in KZN where all those school children and the driver in that accident lost their lives. And I just wondered, like, it is so frequent. I mean, how do you... It almost sounds like a silly question. How do you insulate yourself against that? Because it's like such high risk when you're on these freeways and these high-speed roads when people take the chances. I'm not too sure what the causes are, but we'll certainly cover that later on after 4 o'clock. In fact, we'll get an update on that. But certainly, those are some of the issues that certainly should get your pulses racing as we reflect on the National Pulse. My name is Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the show. Your comments, your views absolutely matter. So this is how you can comment. You can call in 086 000 2032. What is it that you wish to get off your chest? Let's hear it. And then WhatsApp, you can voice note me to 0614 104 107. You have the text option as well. And if you are tweeting, just tag SAFM Radio. Do the same thing if you're sending us a Facebook message as well. And to those regulars that post pictures, that also comment on Facebook to say, I'm here, well, you certainly are here and you have been noticed, right? Let's, however... We're going to talk about the Nobel Peace Prize announcement pretty shortly as well. But let's talk now about an issue that certainly affects not just the president, but all South Africans in one way or the other. You may be aware of what happened yesterday with the NPA confirming they will not pursue the Phala Phala matter any further because the case is not strong enough to withstand legal scrutiny, meaning there's insufficient evidence to really take it through to its logical conclusion. What do you make of that? What do legal people make of this? And where does this go from here? So we thought, let's talk about just that. And of course, I'm sure you listening in will have a strong view on this, right? Intabiseng Dubazani is with me, who's an attorney and director at Dubazani Attorneys. Appreciate your time. You are now connected to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. First of all, I mean, are you surprised at the outcome, at that pronouncement by the NPA?
Considering the manner in which Arthur Fraser was so convinced that there's sufficient evidence, it sounded as if there probably is sufficient evidence for the state to prosecute. So I think alongside with a lot of people, we are surprised that there isn't enough evidence per the DPP's statement. But unfortunately, since we don't have access to the docket, we don't know what it is that is in there, we would have to take their word for it. But with every crime that is committed, I beg your pardon, there are certain elements that have to be met in order for the state to be convinced that they have great prospects of success in this particular instance, which means some of the things that were there, for example, intention and lawfulness or whatever the case may be, but the main cause would be intention. If they cannot prove intention on a prima facie basis, looking at the papers, then they would not pursue such a matter.
Because also, I mean, this case has got so many elements in terms of money, in terms of cash dollars, in terms of who sold what, in terms of the president, in terms of what was declared and not declared. I mean, I just don't know where to stop on this one. And I mean, in terms of what the Director of Public Prosecutions are saying, is that they're saying, in fact, that they certainly don't think that there's a reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution, right, based upon the evidence that they have, something that you alluded to. How do we then, as South Africans, how do we take the story forward? Because there's an emotional aspect, there's the legal aspect, and maybe this is the legal part that's been brought forward, but I don't think emotionally this is going to go away.
No, I don't think so. I don't think the people of the country are going to accept it as is. So if there's going to be anything legal to go forward, so the complainant in this situation being Arthur Fraser and other interested parties who were probably witnesses in the docket and we're not aware of, they have the option to now approach the DPP and say, since you have declared this docket to be a nolli prosecute docket, then kindly provide us with that certificate and then allow us to do a private prosecution, because we believe that there is probably more than sufficient evidence to proceed with this matter. And if the DPP, after considering everything, then allows it to happen, then there we are. Somebody can now proceed with private prosecution. But apart from that, this is where it ends. This is what it is, unless at some stage certain information is brought forth that wasn't available at the time that the statement was made, and then it basically revives it. Because if it hasn't been in a court of law, in other words, the docket has not had a case number attached to it, then it really hasn't gone anywhere. So it can be revived, and then it can be put on the roll again if more evidence now comes to light.
And you talk about a private prosecution compared to what it is now. So help us understand the difference.
So private prosecution is whereby an individual chooses to take on the matter as if they were the state. So usually in a normal criminal matter, and Thabiseng is accusing Ashraf for theft, for argument's sake. When I approach the NPA, I am the NPA's client, and therefore it's now state versus instead of Thabiseng versus. So now, as a result, when the state is of the opinion that they don't have enough evidence, then they can hand it over to Ntabiseng to continue with the matter herself. It's still a criminal matter. It still follows the procedures of Criminal Procedure Act, but it's now Ntabiseng versus. So it's now in the personal capacity of an individual instead of being attached to the state.
Okay, the obvious question then is, does that lessen Ntabiseng's case, or does that strengthen it, or does it not make any difference?
It doesn't make a difference, really. If the evidence was lacking in the beginning and Ntabiseng doesn't have more evidence to add to that, she still has to go through the same processes to prove her case. And if the presiding officer believes that she has sufficient evidence, great, then she would win and Ashraf will be found guilty. But if the evidence is lacking, Ashraf will be declared not guilty. So that's that.
Okay. This point that was made about, no reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution, how normal is that? And I say that because, I'm sure people listening in would think, you see, now this is all political stuff. This is what they do because they're protecting certain people. And then we tend to forget that this type of thing possibly happens very, very regularly. We just don't know about it.
Yes, it's a daily thing, really. So what happens is that Ntabiseng goes and opens a case at the nearest SAPS. Then the SAPS gathers information, and then they take the docket to the SPP. And then the SPP looks at it and decides whether or not there's more investigations that need to be done. Then they continue with those. Once the SPP is satisfied with the information that is currently in the docket, then they can place it on the roll, and then the accused will be arrested. But if the SPP says no, not enough evidence, they not prosecute it, and that's where it ends. So it really happens on a norm.
What do you feel about those that are critical of the NPA and the Director of Public Prosecutions in terms of what they do, critical insofar as in this case here, naturally saying this can only be political. So if someone told that to you, how would you respond to them?
We see so many cases that are of a similar nature and which end up in more or less the same thing, just that they don't end up in the media and because not against the president of the country. Unfortunately, the NPA are not given sufficient budgets to do the kinds of investigations that are required for matters such as this. There are not enough people that are qualified to take on matters such as this. So if they dedicate their resources to this, you must know that they tried their best to try and get information that they needed, and they failed to get what they needed. And if unfortunately somebody fell short of what was needed there, they do not have the funds to get somebody on the outside who's going to invoice them amounts that they cannot pay. So they can only rely on what they have. So Shem, they try. They really, really try. It's just that the state does not give them enough to do what they need to do.
Well, how much pressure then would the NPA be under, in particular when it comes to high-profile cases like these, to be seen as not being partisan?
Enormous pressure, because they're supposed to be as neutral as possible. They need to look at the case as objectively as possible so that they can decide whether or not the matter is worthy of being on a court roll or not. But with that being said, remember the complainants are technically the state's clients, the NPA's clients. So they still need to act in the best interest of their clients. So if they give their client to say, listen, we can't proceed with this matter, and the client isn't happy, they have channels where they can complain all the way up to the NDPP. And if the NDPP still feels like there's not sufficient evidence for this particular case, then the option there in terms of Section 7 is available to you to take on the matter yourselves, because they understand that they will not always give you what you want as a client, and therefore here's an option to take this matter on yourself.
Okay, and maybe just the last thing, again, I am talking about perceptions here. There is, and there has been these perceptions all through from the Zuma case all the way down to now, to say when it comes to high-profile cases, without getting into the details, there's been too much meddling, and therefore we've been soft in nailing certain people down and been too hard on others. And all of that, again, is political, and therefore we don't trust the prosecuting authorities. Now, of course, I'm giving a generalized statement. How, again, if someone told that to you over a braai over the weekend, what would you tell them?
Well, the thing is that when it comes to high-profile cases, there's also money. So money doesn't necessarily mean that there's some kind of corruption that is happening. It just means that if you are the accused person in that matter and you have the funds, you can provide your defense attorneys with the sufficient funds for them to do investigations that the NPA would not be able to do, and bring forth evidence that will dispel that information that they have. And therefore, it makes whatever they have in their docket null and void. So that is the difference between a normal person and people with money.
Okay, and I'm just thinking as we talk and wrap up now, the audience will be saying, you see, it is always about the money. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Intabi Singh Dubazana, who is an attorney and director of Dubazana Attorneys. Right, your comments, your thoughts on that. That certainly should get your pulses racing one way or the other. And you know the story. What is it that drives the national pulse today?
Put a spring in your step with the Espresso Morning Show.
That's right. Join us for fresh ideas, blooming trends, and vibrant tunes that are sure to brighten your day.
Discover the best ways to enjoy this season's beauty, from garden tips to spring fashion.
Come on now. Plus, get inspired with lively interviews and my favorite, the latest in entertainment.
Basically, start your mornings right with us. That's weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. only on S3.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices are making our kids sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, leading to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they get older. We need to protect our kids from all sugary drinks. Demand a stronger health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
TUT Matsatsansa ladies are hungry for victory to climb up the ladder, but Royal AM have an incredible game plan to triumph and keep their top half position. This is the Hollywood Band Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matsatsansa Ladies FC versus Royal AM Ladies on Saturday, 12 October at 11:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, there certainly is expected, the listeners, the audience, yourself saying Ramaphosa must answer and giving further comments about those accidents as well, those horrific stories. We'll talk about that. The accident in KZN in particular coming up after 4 o'clock, right? And by the way, we've got a special guest on a Friday this year, since I'm back now from being 3 weeks away, that is invited as part of our fireside chat. She's an author, she's an activist, she's a journalist. We'll talk to her after 5. Looking forward to that conversation. In the meantime, Nihon Hidankyo, remember the name, a Japanese group of atomic bomb survivors, has won the 2024 Nobel Peace Prize. Now, the organization, made up of survivors of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were recognized by the Norwegian Nobel Committee for its efforts to rid the world of nuclear weapons. The group were praised by the Nobel Committee chair, Jochen Vatner Freidnis, for their use of witness testimony to ensure nuclear weapons are never to be used again. Well, listen to this package.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Peace Prize for 2024 to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo. This grassroots movement of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha, is receiving the Peace Prize for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons, and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again. In response to the atomic bombs attacks of August 1945, a global movement arose whose members have worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of using nuclear weapons. Gradually, a powerful international norm developed, stigmatizing the use of nuclear weapons as morally unacceptable. This norm has become known as the nuclear taboo. The testimony of the Hibakusha, the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is unique in this larger context. These historical witnesses have helped to generate and consolidate widespread opposition to nuclear weapons around the world by drawing on personal stories, creating educational campaigns based on their own experience, and issuing urgent warnings against the spread and use of nuclear weapons. The Hibakusha helps us describe the indescribable, to think the unthinkable, and to grasp the incomprehensible pain and suffering caused by nuclear weapons. The Norwegian Nobel Committee wishes nevertheless to acknowledge one encouraging fact. No nuclear weapons have been used in war in nearly 80 years. The extraordinary efforts of Nihon Hidankyo and other representatives of the Hibakusha have contributed greatly to the establishment of the nuclear taboo. It is therefore alarming that today this taboo against the use of nuclear weapon is under pressure. The nuclear powers are modernizing and upgrading their arsenals. New countries appear to be preparing to acquire nuclear weapons, and threats are being made to use nuclear weapons as part of ongoing warfare. At this moment in human history, it is worth reminding ourselves what nuclear weapons are. The most destructive weapon the world has ever seen. Next year will mark 80 years since 2 American atomic bombs killed an estimated of 120,000 inhabitants of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A comparable number died of burn and radiation injuries in the months and years that followed. Today's nuclear weapons have far greater destructive power. They can kill millions and would impact the climate catastrophically. A nuclear war could destroy our civilization.
Well, therefore, remember the name Nihon Hidankyo, the Japanese group of atomic bomb survivors winning the 2024 Nobel Peace Prize. Let's get to a comment on some of the issues we spoke about earlier, the NPA, that is. Butana on the line from Rosebank. Hi.
Good afternoon, my brother. You know, the NPA behavior, criminal behavior is disturbing. President Ramaphosa, including his spokesperson, confirmed that they did have money, dollars, in the farm. And those dollars were not declared. How they come to us telling us that there's no case? They behave the similar way they behave with Jacob Zuma. Later on, he was prosecuted.
Well, I mean, just to confirm, hold it, they're not saying there's no case. They're saying there's no reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution based on the evidence provided.
That's exactly what they said with Jacob Zuma, remember. The leader of NPA, no prospect of prosecuting the case. Now the case is sitting there for 20 years. And Chief Justice Zondo told us that some of the NPA members, people are associated with the ANC. That is why the rot is so deep.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Butana, you've made your point. That is where the rot is so deep. Well, what about you? And I'm sure, again, you could be in Velcom. You could be on the coast in Cape Town at Sea Point. You could well be in the city of Joburg or Rosebank like Butana. You could be somewhere in Polokwane. You have an opinion on the issue of the NPA deciding they don't have a case to prosecute because they don't see a successful prospect of a successful prosecution. What does that tell you about the case? What does it tell you about the NPA? What does it tell you about South Africa's politics? What does it tell you about the rule of law and the checks and balances and the sense of independence that we certainly have, and we celebrate in our country. It's 3:30. Here's the news headlines with Madubi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, prosecution's boss, Advocate Shamila Batohi, has invited parties who are not satisfied with the NPA's decisions to make use of the review processes available to them. The MK party has lamented what it has termed parallel structures within the organization, and the UN is warning that Pacific Island countries are at risk from a surging activity by criminal gangs. And those are your headlines. A full news update, 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, an ANC Youth League march is moving between Rosebank and the JSE in Sandton. Motorists should avoid travel along the Rivonia Road route. The R21 southbound has a crash reported before the R24 airport interchange. Cedar Road has a crash reported at Cedar Avenue West, and Bearsnodere Drive eastbound has a crash reported at Malope Road. In Durban, the N2 northbound queuing towards Westwood Mall. The N2 southbound has a stationary truck reported after Mgeni Road. The N2 southbound has a serious crash reported north of the Mandini exit. The road's been closed off, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. And in Cape Town, the N1 outbound has one lane open at Lower Church Street. That's after an earlier truck crash incident. Very heavy delays are experienced leaving the city centre area, so please exercise caution. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The M5 northbound queuing towards the N1 Kuburg interchange, and the R300 southbound has a fatal crash reported after Stock Road. The road's been closed off. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Chumi, yesterday we spoke about the women's cricket team. Let's talk about the men's cricket team.
Absolutely. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Proteas men's test captain Themba Bavuma has been ruled out of the first test against Bangladesh due to a left tricep muscle strain. Aiden Markram will captain the side in the first test starting from the 21st of October. Bavuma will travel with the squad to Dhaka on Tuesday to continue his recovery under the supervision of the Proteas medical team, prepping for the second test. And moving on to rugby, World Rugby announced the match officials for the November test window, which includes the Springboks' 3 tests against Scotland, England and Wales. The Bok test will be refereed by Christoph Ridley of England, Andrew Brace of Ireland and Carl Dixon of England. All 3 match officials have refereed tests involving the Springboks this year. Ridley had the whistle in South Africa's loss to Argentina in Santiago, and Brace was in charge of the clash between the Boks and the All Blacks at Ellis Park, while Dixon blew Ireland's dramatic win in Durban. Meanwhile, Bulls boss Jake White has made 3 changes to his starting 15 and an additional 4th on the bench for their clash against Ospreys. White has moved to Kobus Visser to the 5-3 split bench as Ruan Vermaak starts at lock alongside Ruan Norkia. Marco van Staden, who has not travelled for the tour, is replaced by Marcel Coetzee, who slots in 6th flank alongside Reinhard Ludwig, who is also a new change to the side. Then Aluto Chwakeni is the only other change to the matchday 23 on the bench. Moving on to football, Bafana Bafana head coach Chico Bruce has reiterated that they cannot afford to underestimate Congo Brazzaville based on the challenges that they've been going through back home. The Congolese team finally landed in Gqeberha, but not without challenges. And according to SABC Sport, the Congo side only managed to leave Brazzaville yesterday morning due to some internal and immigration issues, but Bruce doesn't want to read too much to their challenges.
There were a lot of things happening in Congo in the beginning of the week. I think we could make no bigger mistake than thinking now that that team will be influenced by what happened and will not be ready for the game. A professional player always wants to win the game. Also those players from Congo, be sure. They know also that yes, they need to win, or they need to have a good result certainly here in South Africa to still have a chance to qualify. And which African players don't want to be qualified for AFCON. So it's up to us to be ready tomorrow.
Remember, kickoff is at 7 p.m. and should they win this fixture and their away fixture, they have all but qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations. Meanwhile, the Carling Knockout round of 16 will take place over the weekend on the 18th to the 20th of October. Defending champions Stellenbosch FC kick off their actions on the 18th against Amazulu at the Kingsway Litini Stadium. In tennis, Taylor Fritz set up a semi-final with either Novak Djokovic or Jakub Menchik at the Shanghai Masters in China today, following a 6-3 and 6-4 victory over Belgium's David Goffin. Now, the American number 7 seed put down 10 aces and hit 23 winners in 82 minutes and improved to 49-19 for the season. And the last time I checked that Djokovic and Menchik match, they both had won a set each, while Djokovic was leading the third set, and will definitely keep you up to date with that one. With that said, that's it from my side.
I want to ask you, so I know it's an international break this week, which means obviously clubs have, they don't play club football. But I do get a sense more than even other leagues, there's a complete stop-start to the PSL league. I'm talking about the league as opposed to the knockouts, right? What's your thoughts about it?
Absolutely. I think it somehow disturbs some teams. You look at a side like Kaizer Chiefs, who started on a high, great momentum for them, but not being able to play for like the next 3 weeks, surely it's somehow going to affect them. And I actually heard the Kaizer Chiefs coach saying that unfortunately for them, this is going to mess up with their momentum. But like teams like Orlando Pirates, who competed in the MTN 8, they're going to compete in the CAF and also compete in the Carling Knockout. For them, it's like a breeze because they're going to be playing consistently. And obviously, for a football player, you want to be playing consistently.
And I think that's been the problem where, certainly in South African football, when they have like the knockout finals in the early part of the season, I don't mean the end of the season knockouts, then they have no football that weekend, no PSL games. So to give them the prominence of the sponsor. But the problem is it completely disconnects for the most teams because only 2 teams play in the final. What about the rest of the supporters from around the country?
Absolutely.
Something's got to change. Okay. Any suggestions you have around that, let us know, as we are speaking to the Minister of Sport, and I mean to me, by the way, just so that you know that around it. More sport in an hour.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Powerball and Powerball Plus is on a roll with a massive 93 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. That's right. Play Powerball for an estimated 42 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 51 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery. The Desert Warriors are looking for their third victory to maintain a 100% winning record. Togo are fighting for their first win of the 2 draws in their opening 2 matches. This is the top of the table contest in Group E. Experience the journey to Morocco in the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Algeria versus Togo on Thursday, 10 October at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Tell you what, it's exam time coming up, and we must talk about that in a moment. In the meantime, some of your comments. Lucky in Kwashu saying, Ashraf, there was never a case in as far as Palapala is concerned. All this was fabricated in order to prevent President Ramaphosa from standing for the position of ANC president. This is as far as it can go. Arthur Fraser will not take it forward because he knows what he was doing. the NPA must charge him for perjury and the president must sue him. Maybe you're getting ahead of yourself. I don't know. Let's get further comments naturally around the same issue.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf and your team. This is Floris from the Western Cape. I was a bit worried about the DA, who was so expressively loud about the Phala Phala saga, and finally they are demanding answers. And I think a lot of South Africans want answers why there is not enough reason to go after all in sundry that was involved in this Phala Phala gate scandal. Because I am slowly losing faith in our justice system. Then why is there still an ongoing case for theft? Cyril needs to be held accountable. Even though he doesn't live in that house, it's his house. The money was supposed to be his. So yeah, he needs to answer to the nation. Have a good job, bye-bye.
Okay, there we are. Well, you have a good show listening in as well. By the way, talking about, since you're from the Western Cape, my guest at After 5 as part of the fireside chat is from the Western Cape, a female who's an activist, who's a journalist, and who's an author. We'll talk to her after 5. I wonder if you can guess who I'm referring to. Here's another comment, related, of course.
Hey, Ashraf. I can't help but be amazed at Steenhuisen's tone regarding the Phala Phala matter. He is so relaxed and he is asking the NPA to explain to Parliament why they're not prosecuting. When they were outside of the GNU, they'll be screaming their lungs out and saying, we will appeal this matter, we will private prosecute it. But right now, he cannot dare speak against the president. Thanks, it's Bongi here.
Okay, well, maybe that's what happens when you're in partnership, isn't it? Okay, we'll get to further comments and calls and your views whenever you're up to expressing it. You know, you can also tweet us and tell us where you are and also post on Facebook, as many people do. And as per usual, if you have a picture of with your dial locked to SAFM, just send it to us, wherever you may be. It's Friday afternoon, maybe more chill, but the big issues absolutely remain, right? Okay, let's get on to another issue. And it is exam time, right? So the Umalusi CEO, Dr. Mafu Rakometsi, has reiterated, to state the obvious, that cheating is a no-go area for any self-respecting candidate. Also emphasizing that it does not pay. Well, we know that, but more than 1.1 million learners now set to participate in the 2024 end-of-year exam. And earlier today, Umalusi provided an update on the state of readiness of examination bodies, and that is particularly important as well, besides just holding people in check and saying, you cannot cheat. So let's then talk to the CEO of Umalusi, Dr. Mafu Rakometsi. Appreciate your time. You are now connected to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners of SAFM.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, first of all, to state the obvious that, cheating is a no-go area for any self-respecting candidate, and yet you find there's a need to make that point. I would suppose that because people will try and get away with things, won't they?
Well, it is because when we go to school to study, it is because we want to acquire knowledge. And there are no shortcuts to the acquisition of knowledge. So if you respect yourself as a candidate, you're not going to try to cheat in any way because you want to grow as a person. You want to be a citizen of the future that is going to contribute to the well-being of this country. But if you cheat, it means the information that you'll be having is inadequate and you'll remain a cheat forever. You'll remain a fraud forever.
Okay, having said that, let's talk about what you can tell us from your side, which is the state of readiness and preparedness for the various organizations that ensure that cheating can be eradicated or even kept to the minimum.
Yes, indeed. What we have done is that we have looked at the system and we have looked at a number of elements. And with regard to those elements, we found that the system was ready. We looked at the question papers, and we found that the question papers have been quality assured by Umalusi. We have looked at the registration data, and it is stable because you don't want students who did not register to write this examination to write the examination. We have looked at the printing facilities, and we have found that they are secure in terms of the papers not being leaked during the printing process. We have also looked at the examination centers, and we also found that everything is in order there. One other element that we looked at is the recruitment of markers, and we are sure that the recruitment, selection, and appointment of markers have been managed effectively, and only qualified people are going to be marking the script of our children. So there are many other elements that I could mention, but in the interest of time, I'm only mentioning those few.
Well, I'm glad that you made the point, but having said that, based upon previous years, how satisfied are you year on year that Umalusi gets all things right?
We are satisfied. The examinations are not run by Umalusi. We are an oversight structure, and in our oversight work, we have established that the examinations assessment bodies are by and large ready to run these examinations. So we are ready to do our oversight as Umalusi. My teams are ready to monitor the examinations across the country and to give reports on daily and on weekly basis up to the point when the examinations will be completed, when we'll be busy with the exercise of marking. Even there, I'm going to be deploying officials who are going to verify that marking happens according to the marking guidelines.
How do you avoid, in terms of your oversight position, the human element of checks and balances put in place as you would, but there's always a human element and things can just change at the last minute based upon certain people's selfish needs and willing to do things that are just wrong? How do you avoid it? How do you plan against that?
We train the people that we deploy adequately. We give them the guidelines, we show them the do's and don'ts, and we show them the dangers of doing things that are not in the book. So we trust that those people will adhere to the guidelines given. We have also made our officials to sign a pledge that they are going to run the processes of quality assurance according to the set standards. So individuals operating in our system have signed a pledge to say we are going to adhere to the guidelines of quality assurance. Anybody who chooses to do any other thing, it is human to do that, and he'll face the consequences of his or her actions.
Just lastly, what's your biggest concern?
Our biggest concern is the capacity in the provincial education departments. Year after year, we make pronouncements about the lack of staff in the examinations directorates. What then happens is that when we go to inspect the different provinces for their state of readiness, we are then told that there will be additional temporary staff members who are going to be appointed as a contingency measure. All I'm saying is that we don't want contingency measures. Examinations are very strenuous for the people who run them, and you need people who are not going to be burnt out because they work long hours. They start very early in the morning, they leave very late, and they have to concentrate and not make mistakes. But if we are going to have skeletal staff throughout the year and only add additional staff towards the end of the year, that is a no-no for us. And my appeal to the different heads of education in the provinces is that staffing has to be capacitated in the different examinations directorates across the country.
Well, let's leave it at that. I'll tell you what, besides those who are writing the exams, let's hope and pray that the examination process gets a massive distinction. And that's where you come in as an overseeing body. The CEO of Umalusi, Dr. Mafu Rakometsi, appreciate you giving up your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much.
Cultural Urban Festival Africa will conclude the weekend in style with an exhilarating brand of football. The City of Roses will vibrate as Bakhabane Bantwa battles it out with Amakhosi. This is the inaugural Kufa Cup. Who will conquer the 90 minutes at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein? Witness the incredible Kufa Cup clash between Maruma Gallants and Kaizer Chiefs this Sunday, 13 October at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. You can also catch it everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCsport.com. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro, Spar, BP, and Shell. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Congo-Brazzaville wants to ensure that AFCON bronze medalist South Africa gets nothing during their visit to Brazzaville. However, Southern Africans Bafana Bafana want to represent the region well by collecting maximum points. This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the exciting journey to Morocco. Congo-Brazzaville versus South Africa on Tuesday, 15 October at 6 p.m. Live on SABC3 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, we will connect to the president of the African Transformation Movement in a moment or so. There are comments about some other issues, including the accident we alluded to earlier on too.
With regards to the accident that happened in Mandini, KwaZulu-Natal, the trucks need to be totally policed now, because I mean they're causing so many accidents, and also the rail system urgently needs to be fixed. But I've been reading somewhere that the ANC cadres have a lot of trucks on the road, so I'm not going to hold my breath for that. But trucks, there needs to be a reduction of trucks. Leonard from Pietermaritzburg.
Thanks for that, Sir Leonard. How would you know they're ANC cadres? I'm just saying, not about the trucks. The trucks are fine. I understand the concern. I'm concerned too, but how would we know that they are ANC cadres?
Hi, Ashraf. This is Tox here from Cape Town. Thank you for the analysis from Jubazana attorneys Tabiseng. I think that was a fair analysis of the situation. Those who have high emotions must then continue with their emotions. I think the important thing that was said is that if there's evidence that they have more than what the NPA has in their docket, they must bring it forward. And maybe pursue private prosecution. Otherwise, they must now keep quiet, continue with the emotions. Thank you very much.
Well, they believe they've got something in their armory anyway, and they're just surprised at the NPA's response. So there'll be more of that, I'm sure.
Molo Tatukata, Sanonymous NPE. Guys, we need to understand the law is applicable to everyone. Just because it doesn't work in your case sometimes because you didn't exhaust every avenue, doesn't mean that it doesn't work for Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa is following the rule of law, and therefore he will defend himself until whenever. The MPA is right. If they see no success, then they must just drop the case. That is it.
It does sound rather worrisome that they find no sufficient evidence to continue with the prosecution, isn't it? No matter which side of the fence that you sit on that issue, right? Well, we certainly know where the African Transformation Movement is on this issue. Remember, they criticize now the NPA for declining to prosecute anyone in relation to the Phala Phala farm case. Yesterday, the NPA revealed that the decision not to prosecute was taken after a careful assessment of all available evidence presented to the prosecutors by the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation. And of course, as we've now already mentioned, they don't believe they've got sufficient evidence to pursue the case to a finality or to get a conviction. Vuyo Zungula is the president of the African Transformation Movement. Vuyo, I appreciate your time. You're connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you so much.
Do I take it your pulse is boiling after you heard the announcement late last night?
Sorry?
Do I take it that your pulses were boiling when you heard the announcement late yesterday?
No, we're not surprised. There's been a clear program by, institutions of government to try and protect Mr. Ramaphosa. Started with the Reserve Bank saying that he was not legally entitled to declare foreign currency because a transaction was not perfected. Whereas if any random person would be picked up with foreign currency in their property, they would be asked, where did you get this? And what's unfortunate here is that the very same Reserve Bank came up to confirm that those dollars that were there were not actually declared. They did not know those dollars were in the country, so they came in illegally. So they're not even bothered by dollars they know that they are illegal in the country, that are in the possession of the president, and he's not declared them. So similarly with the public protector, and so now with the NPA. So it's a case of state institutions protecting a president. It's not something new in the country. Once a person assumes that powerful political office of being president, they get to be protected because all of the heads of these so-called independent institutions, for them to be appointed, for them to be suspended or dismissed, it depends on the very same person, which is the president. So that is why they and these institutions rather choose their careers over the rule of law.
Now, I hear what you're saying. I had a chat to Intabiseng Dubazana, who's with an attorney at Dubazana Attorneys, and she made the point that, in fact, without commenting on this case, she made the point that very often it does happen where the prosecuting authority actually drops a case for the same reason, saying there's no reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution. In this case, it's just that it's high profile. We're aware of it, but she's suggesting it happens very, very often.
But let's look at the facts here. The FIC is very clear as to how much cash is legally permissible to be held by any person. That's the limit is 25,000. Now, Mr. Ramaphosa goes to the independent panel report and assures the independent panel that the amount that was there was in excess of 25,000. Other people in the country have been arrested for holding cash that is above 25,000. Secondly, there has been also arrest of people in the country that are carrying undeclared foreign currency. We know that it is in Mr. Ramaphosa's own assertion that it was foreign currency that was there to the tune of $580,000. It is not something that is said maybe by his political detractors, but it is his own affirmations in his responses. And the last one, which is very, very clear, Section 34 of PRECA mandates everyone or people that are in positions of authority to report any theft, corruption, or fraud that is in excess of 100,000, not just to anyone, but to selected officers under the DPCI. Now, Mr. Ramaphosa is the sole member of the close cooperation. So based on that particular role, he's a person that fits the definition of being a responsible person. The second issue here is that he's aware of a theft that is above 100,000 because the cash that was stolen was indeed above 100,000. But he did not report that to an officer as stipulated in Section 34E of PRECA. So based on those grounds, no one can say that there's no prospects of success, whereas there is a former DDG of fisheries who was arrested just last year for failing to report fraud that was above 100,000. So the issue that we're having as the ATM is to say it cannot be that there's certain laws for other people and then there's laws for other people.
Right.
If there's one person that could be arrested for holding more than 25,000 in cash, let that be the same for everyone.
Okay, last thought as we get on to news time. What would be your position next? What are you going to do?
We're already going to the Constitutional Court on the 26th of November for the Parliament side. We are waiting for the court date for the public protector. We are consulting with our lawyers to see on this issue of the NPA what then would become our next point of departure.
Okay, and let's see what happens coming out of that. Appreciate you giving off your time. Vuyo Zungula, President of the African Transformation Movement. I think what's very clear is that story is not going to go away. The fact that they appear to be, at this point in time, they're saying there's no sufficient grounds for a prosecution. It doesn't mean that the public doesn't think otherwise, does it, right? We're going to chat about that's the accident in KZN, right? We're going to chat about that to Jade Lee Paulser in a moment. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock.
Top stories is how the NPA invites dissatisfied parties and Pacific Island countries plagued by a surge in criminal gangs. A very good afternoon. Prosecution's boss, Advocate Shamila Batohi, has invited parties who are not satisfied with the NPA's decisions to make use of the review processes available. She appeared before Parliament's Justice Committee to discuss the entity's 2023-24 annual report. MPs questioned the NPA's decision earlier this week not to prosecute President Cyril Ramaphosa or anyone else connected to the Phala Phala case. The matter involves millions of American dollars stolen from Ramaphosa's Limpopo farm in 2020. Batohi did not give details of how the decision was arrived at.
There are processes, also review processes, that can be utilized for interested parties who are not dissatisfied with the decision.
The MK party has lamented what it has termed parallel structures within the organization. It has instructed its members to abide by the decisions of higher formations. The party has recently welcomed new members, including high-profile leaders within its ranks. The official opposition held a media briefing on the outcomes of its National High Command meeting. The party's national organizer, Floyd Shibambu.
There are several parallel structures and leadership formations at all levels of the organization. Such will come to an absolute end once the leadership has been announced at all levels. We will not tolerate insubordination and mutiny, and will isolate elements that seek to destabilize our movement. We call on all members of Mkhonto as a party to join first to avoid and stay away from the demons of gatekeeping and factionalism. There will be several members and leaders who will join Mkhonto as a party and will be assigned leadership responsibilities at all levels. We command all structures to abide by the decisions of upper structures.
Over 25,000 people have joined the ANC Youth League's Economic Freedom March, which is set to reach its completion at the Joburg Stock Exchange soon. This is according to the League's Zwelo Masilela, who spoke to our news desk at the march today. Some of the demands being made by the Youth League include employment opportunities and access to economic opportunities. Masilela says the current rate of unemployment, which affects 62% of the country's youth, is a ticking time bomb.
It's a disaster waiting to happen, and we can't fold our arms as the ANC Youth League. We ought to be seen to be doing something, because this unemployment affects all of us. And if we don't resolve it, it will continue to plunge the country into crisis and further crisis that can never be resolved.
The city of Tshwane says a power supply has been fully restored in parts of the metro that suffered a blackout since yesterday. This after a widespread power outage affected large parts of the inner city and 3 regions of the metro last night, including the union buildings, city hospitals, businesses, as well as the Edmund Skinner and River substations. City's technicians have been working around the clock to fix the damage. The city spokesperson, Selby Bukaba.
In the evening, while the team was working on the Bellom substation, another explosion took place at the Kwaha Infeed substation, which supplies power to a sizable number of substations, which include Atteridgeville, Pretoria North, The Orchards, Roslyn, Soshanguve, Pretoria CBD, Pumulane, Waldlu, and others. The city is also pleased to inform its customers that the Pyramid substation, which was gutted by fire last Wednesday on the 2nd of October, has now been energized.
And the UN is warning that Pacific Island countries are at risk from surging activity by criminal gangs. Many Pacific Islands have historically relied on foreign countries like Australia to help with policing, an issue that has become geopolitically charged since China deployed police to the Solomon Islands in 2022. The BBC's Celia Hatton has more.
Pacific Island nations are often quite isolated, separated by vast stretches of open water. Before, that mostly kept them safe from criminal activity, but now gangs are capitalizing on that isolation, using the islands to operate in less patrolled waters, facilitating large ship-to-ship transfers. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime says the region is threatened by drug cartels from the Americas.
The top story at 4 o'clock, prosecution's boss, Advocate Shamila Batohi, has invited parties who are not satisfied with the NPA's decisions to make use of the review processes available. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemele.
In sports, Zwane getting his flowers with 50th cap coming up, and SA Under-19 women's squad announced for Youth T20 Series versus Ireland. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The M2 eastbound has a crash reported near the Risick Street exit causing delays. Sandton Drive westbound is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive, and the N1 southbound has a lost load reported after Buerta Avenue. In Durban, the N2 northbound has a stationary truck before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound has a serious crash reported north of the Mandini exit. The road's been closed, so expect further delays and diversions. And the M19 westbound has a crash reported before the Dunkeld Road exit. In Cape Town, Helen Suzman Boulevard inbound queuing towards Bakengracht Street. Heavy traffic reported on multiple routes through the CBD. Strand Road eastbound is slow moving towards the R300 highway, and Koeberg Road northbound has heavy traffic reported towards the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
TUT Matasanta ladies are hungry for victory to climb up the ladder, but Royal AM have an incredible game plan to triumph and keep their top half position. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matasanta ladies FC versus Royal AM ladies on Saturday 12 October at 11:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Powerball and Powerball Plus is on a roll with a massive 93 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. That's right. Play Powerball for an estimated 42 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 51 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Cultural Urban Festival Africa will conclude the weekend in style with an exhilarating brand of football. The City of Roses will vibrate as Bakabane Bandwa battles it out with Amakhosi. This is the inaugural Kufa Cup. Who will conquer the 90 minutes at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein? Witness the incredible Kufa Cup clash between Maruma Gallants and Kaizer Chiefs, the Sunday 13 October at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. You can also catch it everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro, Spar, BP, and Shell. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So I'm looking at some of the Facebook comments, and Foss Machalela saying, nice show, Ashraf. And then here's an interesting one from Kenneth Modisa Kang saying, always will be there for you as much as you are there for us. Okay, got that. And then saying SAFM Radio, great content. Well, Kenneth, thank you for the kind words. Obviously, it's all put together. I hosted. Temba and Keys play a huge role in it, and Fusani plays a huge role on the digital side. We all make up what is called the National Pulse. By the way, talking about content, so I mentioned we'll have an activist, journalist, author, all in one, and she is featured in my 5 to 6 Friday feature where we have this Friday fireside chat. And the person I'm talking about, if you haven't quite got it as yet, she's from the Western Cape, Zubaydah Jaffer. Looking forward to being in conversation with her. You know what's the good news? You can join us as well. So 5 to 6 coming up just now. Let's, however, now get to some of the issues that really concern me. I must say, when I often drive to KZN, I always get worried. In particular, I get worried about the drive from Maritzburg going all the way down to Durban. I just find that people take that highway, they drive far too fast and they can't navigate the bends. And when people like me drive slower, well, then you're a nuisance to other people. It's always a threat. And I just say that this is not quite the same, but the fact we've just heard about the story of the N2 near Mandeni in KwaZulu-Natal's the North Coast, where 8 people killed in a collision between a car and a truck. Horrific story, many of them children going to school, right? The SABC News reporter Jade Lee Paulser has been covering this story. Jade Lee, appreciate your time. You're connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. I mean, this must be one of those stories that you have to cover, but it's so difficult to cover, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. This morning we received the call that 8 young people had perished on the N2. And when we got there, we ascertained that the kids were actually not going to school. So what had happened was they had left a particular spot. We're not yet sure if it was a social gathering at 4 o'clock in the morning, Ashraf. And the 8 of them were in an Avanza car and traveling en route to Mandeni. And that's when apparently, and this has not been yet confirmed, these are only preliminary reports that are indicating that the driver of the vehicle lost control after a tire burst, causing the vehicle to veer into the oncoming lane and then colliding with the truck. And that truck overturned on impact. 4 of the 8 occupants of the vehicle were school learners. The other 4 were adults, ranged from 18 to 20 years of age, and they were declared deceased on the scene. So the driver of the truck sustained severe injuries and was rushed to hospital.
Okay, and so he's alive?
Yes, he is alive.
Okay.
He sustained minor injuries, yeah.
Okay. I mean, is it too early to say in terms of maybe the police or others speaking to the driver in terms of what actually happened?
Well, we've spoken to the police. We've also spoken to the KwaZulu Department of Transport. And like I said, the NEC, Siboniso Duma, says these are preliminary reports that indicate that the crash, which claimed those 8 people on the N2, was a result of negligent driving. So they're still trying to find the cause. There's different stories and reports coming out. But the Transport Department is saying it's negligent driving. The family is saying that, the tire burst, and if a tire burst is not really classified as negligent driving. There's also reports emerging that these kids were actually coming from a social gathering en route to Mandeni. So I suppose we'll only hear the true story once they finalized their report and furnished us as the media.
Well, I mean, that's true. I think the 2 things that matter now is that lives have been lost. That's 1. They've been lost in an accident, number 2, right? And the third thing, of course, is that besides the lives being lost, there are now families whose lives have been changed forever because they have people, members of their families who are gone. I mean, have you? Let's start with the families. I mean, have they been there at the scene of the accident? Have you been able to speak with them? It must be so difficult.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly difficult. Many of them were inconsolable. I spoke to some of the family members. Nonhlanhla Dlamini, she was a grandmother that lost 3 of her grandchildren. Sure. She said she had received a call early in the morning from her sister who informed her that there had been an accident. And at the time she was in Stanger and she tried catching the taxi to the scene. Eventually her neighbor assisted her and then she got there. When she got there, she found out that her brother's kids had also passed on. So there you got 3 from her sister, 2 from her brother, 5 siblings, 5 relatives rather, that have passed on in that family. And then I also spoke to another gentleman, Ntutuko Ngwane. He also lost his nephew. So speaking to these families was really sad. I mean, it's never easy as a journalist to approach people and ask them to speak to us. I mean, it's still very, very raw. The emotions are high. But these relatives spoke to us and told us they don't understand why the kids were out at 4 o'clock this morning. But, we've spoken to the MEC as well, and he says that The N2 and the N3 has been an issue for many years. Those that are listening right now, they know traveling on those roads, it's become very difficult. And if you look at the N3 stretch all the way to Richards Bay as well, we've seen additional road traffic inspectorate officials, and we've seen SAPS members enforcing the law and paying special attention to the N2 and N3 corridor. But we're just still seeing these accidents happen.
Mm-hmm.
So one has to ask themselves, why do we continuously see this? And if we're heading to the festive period, I imagine you and I are going to be talking in January again.
Yeah, and sadly so, and therefore, you probably heard my intro to say I always have that concern about driving from Maritzburg down to Durban, because I just find people drive far too fast for a very steep downhill incline over 90-odd kilometers, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. But look, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if you know, but Minister Barbara Christie, Transport Minister, she is in the province. We spent 2 days with her. The N3, they are extending the lanes there from Maritzburg to Durban. There's going to be 5 lanes. It's going to take about 5 years. It's millions of rands that are being pumped in and injected into this. And if we look at the project and all the projects in KwaZulu-Natal, it's going to cost the province 50 billion rand to expand some of these roads. But in 5 years' time, hopefully we won't see this road carnage.
What about, just the last thing on that issue, do we say that when you talk about the numbers of accidents on those stretches, and you even mentioned all the way up to Richards Bay, how much of it is poor roads or poor driving?
Look, we've covered a number of them. I think it's a combination of both. One can't always blame the truck drivers. We know that it's been an issue especially on that Richards Bay pass going towards the port. Many people are very frustrated with the truck drivers. But it's ultimately also smaller vehicles that are also causing chaos on the roads. So I think it's a balance of the two. It's a combination of the two. But at the end of the day, when you get behind the wheel, I think we also, as commuters and as drivers, also need to just practice safety.
Absolutely. First, well, from safety, let's talk about winning. So just by coincidence, talking to you today, I understand, there was the Vodacom Journalist of the Year Regional Awards for KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, and the name Jade Lee Paulse came up not once but twice. Tell me about that.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so I won 2 Vodacom Journalist of the Year Regional Awards, one for live breaking news in the province. Ironically, looking at some of the accidents, looking at the devastation such as natural floods. And the second award was on strokes. I don't think we talk too much about strokes, Ashraf, and the unfortunate part is that many people are suffering from strokes, and it's the younger generation. So I did a feature on that, and also educating young people to go to their doctors, get checked out, because we're seeing that stress, financial, economically we're not all there. We are struggling as young people. And also relationship stress is also affecting the youth. So many of these issues are causing a lot of youngsters to suffer from stroke.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, we know both, again, with accidents as well as with strokes, you hope it doesn't happen. The reality, it does happen, and you have a job to do. And therefore, maybe the last thing to you, in terms of your role as a journalist, as a reporter, when you have to address these issues, how do you approach it to the point where you ultimately deliver to an audience, right? Because that's really your responsibility. But to deliver in a way that's responsible on the one hand, but on the other hand, it still has to be impactful for us to be hooked into the story.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it's a balancing act. I do on the field on a daily basis. I check my facts. I never walk in blindly. It doesn't matter who gets the story first, but it's all about who gets the story right.
Yeah, and the win for you, you've won before, I know. What does this mean for you personally and in terms of your career?
Personally, this is really a great win for me. I've been at the SABC for 10 years now, starting out in radio, moving to TV, and I've got 12 awards. So it goes to show that hard work really goes a long way. I'm humbled. I'm really humbled that the judges have awarded me not only 1 but 2 awards this year, and we keep it going. We keep telling these impactful stories, bringing our human interest stories to the fore as well, because at the end of the day, journalism it's all about the people, it's all about the public, it's informing and educating, and I hope that I can do that for many, many more years.
And it's clear that you are doing that. So 10 years, 12 awards in terms of telling the stories that truly matter, and may you continue doing just that. So Jade Lee, great chatting to you, and well done on the awards. But again, talking to you at a time where we've once again referring to a tragedy in KZN. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you. There we are. What do you make? I mean, first of all, just on the back end, the awards again of someone who's prominent in the field and does fantastic things, and you may be following her stories. I'm sure you do on television, mainly on SABC News. But on the other hand, the issues of, seriously, how often are we going to talk about road accident deaths in South Africa, where not just one or two people, but you find 10, 15 people dying? It's just the way it is. And that can't continue. And yet, as I say, it can't continue. I know it's going to continue. So what more needs to happen, in terms of road change, car change, behavior change, decision-making change? How do we treat that with a sense of urgency as we have treated the issues around COVID-19? Now, I often use that example because there we were on top of our game. We understand it's a crisis and we dealt with it like a crisis. So why are we not dealing with this in the same way as a crisis? I know there's massive awareness all the time, but somehow or the other, for some reason, it's clearly not going through, because if the message is coming through, we would see a complete change in the way we drive our cars. We're just not seeing that. Let's get your thoughts. This is the National Pulse.
The University of Johannesburg ladies plan to conquer the morning and secure a crucial 3 points for breakfast. But Richmond United believe it is about time for them to rub shoulders with teams in the top half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game, UJ Ladies FC versus Richmond United Ladies FC, on Saturday, 12 October at 9 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. Those who love the game say chess is the gymnasium of the mind. The world's top chess players will showcase exciting fast chess played among 6 teams in search of the ticket to the ultimate glory. This is the second season of the Tech Mahindra Global Chess League. Catch the Global Chess League 2024 action from 3 to 12 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, let's get to your calls. By the way, we're going to chat to Dr. Nasipi Moya, the city of Tshwane mayor, regarding that whole blackout in that city yesterday. And we'll talk to her around 10 to 5, looking forward to that. And then after 5, as part of the Friday Fireside Chat, we chat to Zubaydah Jaffer. Looking forward to that conversation. Right, let's get your calls. There's no surprise here, considering the big issue that, it often happens. We just raise it and you see what happens. And everybody wants to talk about the NPA. George certainly has that view. George, hi.
How are you,
I'm very good indeed, George. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ashraf, let me first make a disclaimer so that my point will be clearly understood. First of all, I'm not a member of the African National Congress, and I'm not a fan of Ramaphosa. But I wish to state this. Arthur Fraser misused the information that was entrusted to him when he was a state employee to lay a charge against the president. Remember, Arthur Fraser was in the Department of Correctional Services for some time after being removed from the intelligence center.
Mm-hmm.
When he was there, he never disclosed this information. Because I have to be clear, where he is, he knows that he is a Zupta. He's a Zupta because he supports the president and former President Zuma, and he hates President Ramaphosa with passion. So this thing has been politicized a little bit, and it's difficult now to navigate through it because there's a blow line between what Arthur Fraser wanted to achieve than the facts that are contained in the case. But anyway, to conclude the issue, if there are people who feel that the NPA has made a wrong decision in not further prosecuting people who were involved in this case, they must follow suit and follow the process that the lady, the legal expert that you invited, in order to pursue this case, rather than to make political statements which are not going to help us. You see, the people of South Africa, I don't know how they think. We can't be having Zuma back into power. We know what happened with this patronage system that he put there when he was a president. At least Ramaphosa was conducting business, of which maybe ethically he was not supposed to, because he was the deputy president by then. That has to be done in a different way. But we are not prepared to have Zuma back into power.
Okay, George, I got that. You've said lots of different things, and I'm going to leave it up to the audience to reflect on that, because clearly, these are issues of fingers on the pulse, and it certainly gets all of us thinking about what moves the national pulse today. So thank you for that. Interesting point about George saying it's political. I wonder, which one is political? Is the charge made by Arthur Fraser political, or is the response from the NPA political? Of course, different people have different views on that, right? Shorty in Mafefe, hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. Go for it. You tell me. How are you?
I'm good, Tommy. Thank you for opportunity.
That's good. Right, go ahead.
Yes, I don't know what kind of message the NPA is sending to the people of South Africa regarding their decision not to prosecute President and other people who are involved in Phala, because clearly there was a crime committed. Crime of illegal money that was stored under mattress in his farm. Money laundering is a criminal activity. You can't prosecute those who break in your house, stole the money that came in your house illegally, the money that came in the country illegally. So then you are saying, I'm only going to prosecute those who stole that money. The money that was not in the bank, the money that was not declared to SARS.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, look, let me just say this. I mean, if you heard what the NPA position from the prosecuting side is, they saying that at this point in time, the evidence before them doesn't warrant them pursuing the case. It doesn't mean they're saying nobody's done anything or they've let people off scot-free. At this point in time, and this is the words, no reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution based on the evidence provided. Now, that can change when there's more evidence being provided. Thanks for that call, Shorty. Good talking to you, right? Let's get to KZN now. Temba, hi.
Very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you for taking my call. And how are you?
I'm very good indeed. Go ahead. What's your point?
I just want to find out something. There are people from Namibia who are in jail as we speak. Why they're in jail? That's number one. Two, Mr. Sandile Ngcobo, a former judge, what did he say regarding this matter? Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, he agreed that he money found it was his money. Lastly, please can somebody educate me in this matter? Then I'll end up with this.
Okay.
Very soon, news.
Well, let's see in terms of your points about somebody educating you. I think we've spoken about it at length, but if others want to educate you, as you say, let's leave it to the audience. Thank you for that. Appreciate that call. Hi Ashraf, it's nice to be President Ramaphosa. You have your public protector, your NPA who protects you. Even the DA is quiet because they now enjoy the blue lights. And there's another. Ashraf, all I can say is that most of the KZN people do not respect other motorists. Drunk driving and arrogance is the big issue. Well, okay. I mean, whatever it is, certainly South Africa's rate of accidents on our roads just completely beyond the realms of acceptable, isn't it? The Ramaphosa story clearly top of the agenda in driving the national pulse today.
Hey, afternoon, Ashraf.
once Ramaphosa or the legal fraternity is doing this, honestly, we are going to have our own friends in those who must enforce the law so that we know how to break it. South Africa soon is going to be a lawless country, and it's going to be a mess. It will adopt the stance of other countries wherein no rule of law. You drive in any lane that you feel like. You can do whatever you want. As long as you can have friends who will stand for you in judiciary, then your story wins. Thank you.
Okay, got that. Friends that'll stand. Many may say one of the great things about South Africa is the separation of powers. We have that. That doesn't exist in many, many other countries in the world. But you think otherwise? I'll leave you to consider that opinion. By the way, just because it's the weekend and it's Friday, what are your plans for the weekend? I mean, just seriously, what plans do you have? Ideally, I'm having come away from being overseas for 3 weeks. I want to put my feet up, maybe play paddle on Sunday, watch some other things. But beyond that, pretty relaxed. What are your weekend plans? Any special things today? I certainly want to know about it. Let's get the news headlines. It's 4:30. Yes, Majupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. G, and a good afternoon. In your headlines, prosecution's boss, Advocate Shamila Batohi, has invited parties who are not satisfied with the NPA's decisions to make use of the review processes available. The Eastern Cape Health MEC, Ntandokazi Xapa, says measures that are put in place to fight crime in Lusikisiki are not working. And this year's Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to the Japanese grassroots organization Nihon Hidankyo. It is made up of survivors of the American atomic bomb attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the Second World War. And those are your headlines. Greg will have your full update 5 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 southbound has a crash reported before the R24 airport interchange. Santon Drive westbound is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive. The N1 northbound is slow moving towards Samrand Road, and the N1 northbound slow moving towards the Garsfontein Road exit. In Durban, the N2 northbound has a stationary truck reported before Spaghetti Junction that's causing delays. The N2 southbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction, and the M19 westbound has a crash before Dunkeld Road exit. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has heavy traffic towards Hospital Bend. The M3 Philip Gesana Drive outbound has heavy traffic towards Hospital Bend. The R300 southbound slow moving towards the M7 Jakes Hadwell Drive, and the N1 outbound queuing towards Okavango Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
So, to me, we touched on it yesterday about Bafana playing against the Congo. Note that I do not have a Bafana top on. But let's talk about that and one key man.
Yep, and that key man is Themba Zwane, and Bafana goalkeeper Ronwen Williams has hailed him as an extraordinary player, as the midfielder is set to celebrate a 50th cap in the South African men's senior national team jersey today during the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier against Congo. Zwane, who made his debut for Bafana 10 years ago during a goalless draw in New Zealand under coach Gordon Egerson, has come a long way at this level.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng.
Yeah, amazing human being, amazing player, one of the greats of South African football, and we're just proud, to have him in our team. And for us, it's a blessing, to see him each and every day, showcasing his skill and his talent. And Mshishi has achieved so much, but yet he still puts in extra work. Despite his age, despite all the setbacks that he has, he keeps going and he keeps looking to get better.
But he is a fabulous player, isn't he?
Absolutely.
He's the type of player where you pay to watch him, to use that phrase, where he excites.
He's absolutely exciting. He's 35 years, and the way he plays on the field, you can just see how hungry he is. Obviously, whenever he comes in, somehow there is some sort of a difference that he's making. Right now, obviously, coaches are trying to manage him, especially at Mamelodi Sundowns, but he's definitely been a key player for Bafana Bafana.
We need to score a goal today, or two, or set up something. We need to win, absolutely.
We're crossing fingers for them. Meanwhile, the highly anticipated inaugural season of the Mzansi Equality League has officially kicked off in Cape Town, marking a significant moment in South African football and youth empowerment. This 6-week tournament that is backed by La Liga South Africa will provide young girls with a unique opportunity to develop leadership skills and therefore positively impact their communities, as well as giving them the chance to showcase their talent on the pitch. It was originally launched in Cameroon and has had 3 successful seasons. Also, the tournament has now been launched in Kenya. And then defending champions Stellenbosch FC will kick off their Kali knockout action on the 18th of October as they face Amazulu at the Kingswell Tennis Stadium, with the match starting at 7 p.m. Then on Saturday, the 19th of October, it will feature 4 fixtures beginning at 3 p.m. with Orlando Pirates hosting Magesi FC at Orlando Stadium and Cape Town City taking on Royal AM at Athlone Stadium. The action continues in the evening with Mamelodi Sundowns facing Golden Arrows at the Lucas Muripe Stadium, and that fixture is at 6 p.m. followed by Polokwane City versus Marumo Gallants at the Old Peter Mokaba Stadium, and that one at 8 p.m. There's also action on the 20th of October, TS Galaxy taking on Chipa United and Bombela Stadium, while Supersport United meets Kaizer Chiefs at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane, with both matches kicking off at 3 p.m. The round of 16 will be concluded with Richards Bay going up against Kukuni United at Kingswell Tennis Stadium, and that one is at 5:30 p.m. In Cricket South Africa has announced the South African under-19 women's squad that will take on Ireland under-19 in a 5-match Youth T20 International Series from the 28th of October to the 1st of November. The matches will be held at the Groenkloof Oval in Tshwane, marking a key step in the team's preparation for the ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup 2025 that is set to be hosted in Malaysia. Now, the 15-player squad includes 7 players who were part of South Africa's squad at the inaugural ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup in 2023. Finally, in tennis, Novak Djokovic beat Jakub Menchik 6-7, 6-1 and 6-4 to claim the last spot in the Shanghai Masters semi-finals. The Serb, who is now aiming for a 100th singles title in Shanghai, will next take on world number 7 Taylor Fritz. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour.
And what are your plans for the weekend, by the way?
I'm working tomorrow.
TV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hollywood Bets Super League. And then I'm just resting.
Go and sleep. I'm not going to tell people how tired you are. I won't tell them, but I know you're tired.
Like you.
I forgot to bring my chop because I had to moderate some session today. Rushed from there straight into the mosque. I must tell you that. Came here because I come here early. It's like, oh my goodness, my Bafana chop. Next time.
But also the jet lag. You can blame it on that.
But at some stage, that jet lag's got to stop. You can't blame things that happened 30 years ago, you know. All right. I will say have a great weekend. No, you're going to come back just now.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
The Desert Warriors are looking for their 3rd victory to maintain a 100% winning record. Togo are fighting for their first win of the 2 draws in their opening 2 matches. This is the top-of-the-table contest in Group E. Experience the journey to Morocco in the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Algeria versus Togo on Thursday, 10 October at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Let's talk about those numbers with Paswana Mpatlele, Senior Account Manager at Makwe Fund Managers. Good chatting to you as always. Let's talk about the local and global markets.
Afternoon, Ashraf, and to all your listeners. Happy Friday, guys. Looking into the
the whole global picture here. We came through with U.S. producer price inflation numbers that came unchanged thanks to some energy prices having cooled down. And when you take this set of numbers, the markets have taken it in line with the CPI inflation that it continues to cool down, and labor market that is relatively softening out in controlled manner. And in consensus, the markets have put it together and said 25 basis points cut will be the one coming in November. And this has helped the dollar to hold at its current levels, but failing to go any higher. Bond markets are in agreement about these developments, and they're actually even adding in a pricing of sticky inflation. As we see, their long end continues to be volatile, hitting 4.1%, and this at the back of the global easy monetary policy worries, China stimulus, higher commodity prices filtering into that inflation story. But the above developments, and in addition to the ongoing Middle East developments, has held oil now up for a second week at $78.56 a barrel. Gold remains bullish in this environment, up 0.8 at $2,651 an ounce. And just going forward for the markets, focus will remain on the Chinese stimulus over the weekend to hear if any more details will be brought out. U.S. ECB rate decision coming in, U.S. elections. We see the likes of JP Morgan came out with good numbers across the board in their matrices. But the one key thing there that David Diamond released there was a concern going forward, the cautionary outlook about the global scene, and that's why he highlighted that the cash is king, and this just talks to the risk factors that the markets are going to start hedging towards. Is the U.S. inflation. Currently, we're seeing polling says Harris has an upper hand, but on the betting market where money is involved, Trump does. So we have to see what would happen on that front and that risk event. Closing in on the performances, U.S. is still hitting record highs in terms of the Dow up 0.7, S&P up 0.6, Nasdaq up 0.4, FTSE in Europe is up 0.3, DAX up 0.7, CAC up 0.5. Locally, we are up 1% thanks to our financials up 1.9, resource up 1%, industrials up 0.3. And look at our currency, we are better off. We are strengthened by 0.5% at 17.43 against the dollar, then against the euros at 19.05, and then against the pound 22.78.
Okay, great. Thanks for giving us that update. And of course, we'll do the next update with you next week. I'm sure of that.
Definitely.
Paswane Mpatlele, the Senior Account Manager at Makwe Funds Managers, right? Okay, what we'll do is we're going to connect with the NC Youth League shortly. You know, they've been doing this. They had this march. They're having this march to the JSE today. So the plan is to connect with them, and we'll do that as soon as we can, right? In the meantime, here's some comments from you, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf Ayman. Ashraf, I've been trying to get out of Cape Town. I've got a staff in Woodstock. Now they are nagging me. The traffic is a nightmare to get out of Waterfront. What is going on? What is it happening? Why the traffic is so nightmare to get out of Waterfront? I've been driving around. I mean, the traffic is a nightmare. It will take me over 2 hours to get to just here in what you call in Woodstock. What's going on? Why the traffic is a nightmare all over Waterfront? I've been trying to navigate outside, but I can't. Everywhere is a traffic.
Well, there you are. Well, I tell you what, you know, you there, and many of us will tell you that, you know, if you're in that waterfront area on a Friday in Cape Town, it is crazy. In fact, I think also for many of us driving in Cape Town, getting to the airport, if you're coming back, let's say in my case to Joburg, I think after you pass Woodstock, Warmer Estate and Groote Schuur, it's only after you get that split, almost close to Athlone, Pinelands area, where it becomes more free-flowing. It's chaotic after 4 o'clock. It is really, really crazy. That doesn't help you, I know that. Perhaps you should consider the subway. I'm talking about trains, which is another conversation. I'm saying it very intentionally, and I'll further that comment right after this.
Ashraf, James here in Johannesburg. Yeah, man, I think it's fine. Don't prosecute him now. Let him maybe try to prosecute everybody else, and then once his term is over, lock him up. I think there's a very funny video that captures it while in Zulu, that he should just lock up everyone, and once he's locked up everyone, when he's off the seat, we'll lock him up as well, because the whole lot of them are just corrupt. Hey.
Well, there you are. That is an ongoing story. Let's go back to that issue about the waterfront, because when I said take a train, I'm saying it tongue-in-cheek, but here's the reality. And I know Lorenzo Davids, hopefully you're listening. Lorenzo has spoken, he's from Cape Town, has spoken extensively about the fact that until South Africa gets to a position where the majority of people, working class, middle class, use public transport, we will always be on the back foot. A lot of money gets wasted on cars, and then the traffic jams that causes, and the efficiency of public transport in any country is a key barometer of the functioning of a country or the functioning of a city. Now, I can tell you now, it is my fourth trip to London, last week, right? And that underground system, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about 120 years old. That's how long it was set up. And, we've got the Gautrain, a really luxury setup. Other cities I went to, Montreal, Toronto has got undergrounds. But I think there's been nothing like it in terms of the levels that London has had, considering it's had it for such a long time. And the plus side of that, this is the point I want to bring up, right? Because it is so relatively safe and so incredibly efficient, where you don't wait for more than 3 minutes, right? I can tell you now, if you were the equivalent of living, let's say you mentioned Woodstock. So let's say you're in Woodstock, and if you want to go to the waterfront, if you were in London, that equivalent, there is no way you will take your car. You will actually go by the underground. And in fact, the same applies if you further away. And I'm going to use the Cape Town example. If you were somewhere out, further down, let's say even as far as Mitchell's Plain, for example, you would take a form of underground, getting into the inner city, and then being part of a whole multi-level underground system that networks each one. And when you do that with that level of efficiency, and you don't wait more than 3 minutes for a train, and it's safe and it's just on the ball, you don't need your cars. You really don't need your cars. Now, how far are we from that for the majority of South Africans, where you'll get families not just going to work, but going out at night and coming back at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and using public transport as in the underground system? Well, that's the wish, and that would be a barometer of a champion nation. I know we are far from that. I so wish that happens.
Good day, SAFM. Lamula from Boxback. Phala Phala exposed the flip-flop of parties in their coalition they proclaim GNU. After Commission said there is case to answer, most of them, including DA, supported statement. Today they changed their tune. The biggest issue here is the darling, corrupt or not, can't be judged, because step aside will dissolve their corrupt, non-reliable capitalist coalition.
Okay, there we are. Again, lots of comments around that. And there's a further comment that we'll pick up on around the justice system.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, the way our justice system is seemingly so compromised under Ramaphosa, if the judgment that was made today by the NPA that it's not going to prosecute Ramaphosa, it was made against Zuma, we would even be having justice analysts analyzing this, trying to find a way to say Zuma was guilty. Here is a man who admitted to have currencies that were not declared, but they say there's no case. We just said that's a case on its own, that the currencies were not declared, and it's foreign currencies which is not supposed to be trading in.
Okay, just that line sort of fizzled away at the end. But yeah, I mean, I hear you about the currency issues, and there's more. Here's an interesting one, considering we're chatting to the mayor of Tshwane coming up pretty shortly.
In my humble opinion, I think the NPA is just simply trying to avoid the step-aside rule here. So now that they don't want to prosecute the president, I'm putting a challenge to AfriForum. You have been running around trying to private prosecute Julius Malema for nonsensical things. Here is the case. Please try and private prosecute the president. And I'm sure a lot of South Africans are more interested in this case involving the president than the one involving Julius Malema. Thanks, Ashraf. This is Luzuga in the Eastern Cape.
Okay, more this one than that of Julius Malema. Let's see if there's another that I can pick up on. Here's one.
Hi, Ashraf. On this Phala Phala matter, I say let sleeping dogs lie. Pursuing it will not bring us a better tomorrow. And to those who are getting excited about the prospects of private prosecution, I ask one simple question. Please tell me a single case, just one case of a successful private prosecution case in this country. Thanks, Farai.
Okay, thanks for that, Farai. Well, interesting one. And I know I've heard that before. Maybe just jog our memories, those that know better than I do. A successful prosecution from the NPA at a high level, well, even high level, low level, whichever. I certainly would love to know. Maybe you can tell us about that. Just the last thing on the issue of public transport that I've just raised, right? What about you? Do you use public transport? And I don't mean taxis, which is also public transport, because you get the two types of taxis, the car taxis, and then, of course, people use e-hailing as well. But then, and then, of course, what we call the Zolabad taxis in South Africa. But what about public transport as in rapid rail? Do you use that at all in South Africa? I really, really want to know. And would you be keen to use it if we upgrade to a level of super efficiency, super clean, on the ball, timely, safe, everything that just works for you? Would you discard your car? I can tell you now at the moment, if I have to drive to Pretoria for work, and this is interesting considering the mayor of that city is listening to me now, if I have to drive there for work, I promise you, I go with the Gautrain. But the problem is that's just one exception to the rule. I'm talking about the entire network of rail in our country. Can we get to that level where it's always going to be first choice, as it is in many parts of the world? Zubaida Jaffer, by the way, we're talking to her after 5 as part of our fireside chat. Listen out for that. We chat to the new mayor of the city of Tshwane after this.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
TUT Matsatsansa ladies are hungry for victory to climb up the ladder, but Royal AM have an incredible game plan to triumph and keep their top half position. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matsatsansa Ladies FC versus Royal AM Ladies on Saturday, 12 October at 11:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So let's talk about the city of Tshwane. We have a new mayor. We also have something that doesn't change in terms of a power outage yesterday. Let's bring the two together with the newly elected mayor of the city of Tshwane, Dr. Nasipi Moyo. I appreciate your time and thanks for connecting to the National Pulse for the first time.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and to the listeners of SAFM. It's quite cool to be here, so thanks for the opportunity.
It's cool to talk to you as well, and well done on your new position as the new mayor.
Thank you so much.
Now, having said that, it seems like if you wanted like a honeymoon period of 100 days, you certainly didn't get that, as you know, right? Big power outage in many parts of the city, from the city, and I think a few outlying areas, and you had to react very, very quickly. I mean, I noticed with great interest your tweet, where you obviously tagged SAFM Radio and myself, and talked about saying about the city of Tshwane's brilliant response. So let's talk about your brilliant response. What was the problem and what was the brilliant response?
So basically, yesterday we had about 4 outages in the city. In the morning when we woke up, Soshanguve was out. There was a case of vandalism in our W substation. While we was, the officials were very quick in getting the material. We coordinated the teams. The work started there. In fact, they estimated that the turnaround time would be Sunday, and about 12 o'clock today, they already energized. So, but that was the first one. While we were with the minister, yesterday, then I hear that Union Buildings is out. And then obviously the team had to be sent there. Then we went to Pyramid, because Pyramid has been off since the 2nd of October because of the transformer exploded there. So we went there to energize, just to make sure the team has everything that they needed. As we're about to energize, we told the other substation, the Bela Ombre, just went out, and it's affecting energizing Pyramid substation. So the team had to be sent there. This is now around 7:30 at night. At 8 o'clock, we get a video where there's now, it wasn't clear in the video what was burning, but something was burning at Kwacha, and then we started getting calls, messages, Kwacha is out. And that was around 8 o'clock. And because we were already with the team at Pyramid, we had to coordinate very quickly in terms of how do we respond, obviously working with ESCOM. And I mean, within 6 hours, the electricity was restored in all the areas that were affected. So I really do, express my gratitude to the officials that obviously had to work all those hours and be creative and be cooperative. Yeah, so I think that was the brilliant response to me, how the officials really did what they were supposed to do. It's unfortunate that we get these outages, and it's something that we need to work on very strongly, because
let's stay
the inconvenience.
Let's stay with that, what outages the cause in the first place. I mean, you mentioned vandalism in one. I mean, would you say it is vandalism across the board there? Because, we have issues of vandalism and outages in many parts of our country on an ongoing basis, and it just feels like, well, we can't do much about it. This is the way we live.
Yeah, so in Soshanguve, it was a clear case of vandalism. In Pyramid, it looks like it, but I said to the colleagues, I need the report, which we should be getting soon. It looked like someone just came in, cut a few strings there, and then the transformer exploded. It does look like that one is vandalism as well. However, in Kwacha, the circuit breaker that caught fire, it was commissioned in 1973. It's 51 years old. So that's the other cause that we have in the city, that we have old infrastructure, that we have not been able to maintain at an acceptable standard, where the norm would be 5% of the value of the asset. We've been doing that. So obviously, old infrastructure, you're not keeping up with your maintenance plans. Obviously, that's bound to catch up with you. Even though we do have a budget, for instance, to upgrade Kwacha, it's not that 5% that will make sure that even if it's an old asset, but if you maintain it properly, at least the lifespan is prolonged. But in Kwacha, the preliminary assessment, obviously, we're not ruling out anything. ESCOM is busy downloading on their side in terms of like the sequence of events. The city of Tshwane is doing the same, and the two teams within 7 days will be reporting exactly what happened in Kwacha, beside the preliminary assessments that we've received.
Now, what happened this time around that saw things being addressed as quickly as they have? Because you mentioned even the first example, I think one of the places was out since October 3, if I can recollect. That means we get used to certain areas where things just don't get fixed up for a long, long time. And the issue of Hammanskraal and water, we'll talk about maybe some other time. That's, as you know, been going on for years, right? So what happened in this case here that things got resolved so quickly?
I don't know, Ashraf. All I know is that I was on site with the officials and I offered my support. And whenever calls had to be made, I made those calls. And, in terms of getting them the materials that they need. But also, I think what was important in the work that they were doing is that I was there to facilitate between the officials and the councillors and communities, that I made sure that there was communication flowing, that there was no interference with the work that they were doing. They were not distracted. So I don't know if that was the magic wand, but I do believe that there are things that obviously you don't want to depend on the mood. You need to have systems in place and procedures that when there is for instance, in Pyramid, the last time that substation bent, it took 21 days to restore it. Yeah. This time around, it took 9 days. And I said to the team, you guys are going to make me get used to good things, because if we have projects that take 3 years, but I can see you building a substation in 7 days, we truly need to have a discussion, because obviously the capacity is there. Question is, what is the stumbling block in the city having to adopt this pace at all times?
Yeah, well, it's a valid point. I mean, therefore, would you say, can I put it to you that what happened this time with its speed and its brilliance is directly attributed to the new energy brought about by the mayor, yourself?
I would love to think so. But if that's the case, I would like to also sustain it with the officials. And I think that will depend on the support that I provide to them and making sure that they've got what they need when they need to work.
Okay. We're almost on to news time. So just a quick answer here. At the same time, I see the EFF has been very clear about their position regarding an MOU that AfriForum has with the city in terms of, first choice and go-to people in sorting out problems in the city. What's your position regarding that? Because the push has been from some quarters, including the EFF, that must change.
Yeah. So when it comes to the AfriForum MOU, AfriForum is not the only organization in which the city has an MOU with, for various reasons. Now, I don't think it makes sense to be selecting, parts of the residents of the city like that. I think it's unfair on them. We committed, even in my speech, we committed that we're going to serve the residents of the city equally. So, and also that we're going to be open to business and partnership with everyone, all the stakeholders in the city. But I do think, obviously for us, we need to have a discussion among ourselves in terms of what are their discomforts. Do they think there was something illegal about the MOU? But for now, I would not be a person that want to select who is, the genuine resident of the Tshwane we want to work with, while we have made the pronouncement that this government is going to be for all residents of Tshwane.
Okay, let's leave it at that for now. To you, Madam Mayor, for the first time, it's to quote you loosely, it's less about being political and more about service delivery, and long may that be sustained. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg Coase.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, Batoy speaks on NPA decisions and families of Mpumalanga crash victims demand answers. Good day to you. The National Director of Public Prosecution, Shamila Batoy, has invited parties who are not satisfied with the decisions of the NPA to make use of the review processes that are available. She appeared before Parliament's Justice and Constitutional Development Committee to discuss the entity's 2023-24 annual report. MPs questioned the decision by the NPA earlier this week not to prosecute President Cyril Ramaphosa or anyone else connected to the Phala case. The matter involves $500,000 stolen from Ramaphosa's Limpopo Phala farm in 2020. Batoy didn't give details of how the decision was arrived at.
There are processes, also review processes, that can be utilized for interested parties who are not dissatisfied with the decision.
Batoy's cautioned against the use of a certificate that certifies that the prosecuting authority declines to prosecute a matter to further certain agendas. This after she was asked by MK Party MP Mazonele Mani when the NPA would issue the certificate. The certificate would enable the process of private prosecution to start. Batoy explained that a certificate is issued following a request by an interested party, but also cautioned against the use of it.
It's important, it's good that we have it in our law, but it needs to be, we need to ensure that, like the NPA, that works within a particular legal framework and has a constitutional obligation to ensure that we prosecute without fear, favor, or prejudice, that private prosecutions are not utilized in order to further certain agendas.
Meanwhile, the MK parties expressed shock at the decision of the NPA not to prosecute anyone in relation to the robbery at Phala. The official opposition has decried the move and accused the NPA of being captured. It held a media briefing in Sandton, north of Johannesburg today. MK Party Deputy President John Klope says the president is guilty of tax evasion.
If, as we all know, money was not disclosed to the tax man and it was hidden under the mattress, it clearly means it was tax evasion. The president evaded tax. There is no two ways about it. He is guilty of tax evasion. The suggestion by NPA that there are no reasonable prospects of success is nonsensical, to say the least.
The Eastern Cape Health MEC Ntonakazi Kapa says measures that are in place to fight crime in Lusikisiki are not working. She was speaking at the funeral of Ruth King, one of the 18 people who were gunned down in Lusikisiki last month.
We are really very saddened as government, and we are hoping that this is not going to happen again. And the issue of killing of women in the area is very prevalent. A lot that we've been doing as government. We've done awareness. We've even organized a rapid response team, so that whenever there are incidents, that there are people who are here before we come in as government. But indeed, it seems as if we are hitting against the wall. But we will not give up. We'll continue. But it's a very, very sad incident.
Families of the 6 learners who died during a scholar bus and train crash on the R104 outside Middelburg and in Mpumalanga say 2 months since burying their children, they still do not have any answers. According to the families, all the promises made to them have not been fulfilled. During the crash, 20 learners, 2 train drivers and the bus driver sustained injuries. The police have called on parents to give the police time to conclude the investigation. This year's Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to the Japanese grassroots organization Nihon Hidanko. It's made up of survivors of the American atomic bomb attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the Second World War. The head of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Jürgen Freitnes, praised the group.
This grassroots movement of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha, is receiving the Peace Prize for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons, and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again.
The top story, the National Director of Public Prosecutions has invited parties who are not satisfied with decisions of the NPA to make use of the review processes that are available. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
In your sports this hour, Bruce urges his charges to not undermine Congo and Proteas women ICC Women's T20 World Cup semi-finals. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, an ANC Youth League march is currently underway at JSC in Sandton. Motorists should avoid travel along the Maud Street route. The M2 eastbound has a crash reported near the Risick Street exit, and the N4 Witbank Highway westbound has delays towards the N1 highway. In Durban, the N2 northbound has a stationary truck reported before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction, and the M19 westbound has a crash before Dunkeld Road exit. In Cape Town on the R44 Clarence Drive, an update for you with multiple stop-and-go controls between Gordons Bay and Royals due to storm repairs has led to trucks over 18.5 metres in length to now be prohibited along the section. The N1 outbound has one lane open at Lower Church Street after an earlier truck crash incident, which is causing very heavy delays leaving the city centre area. And the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has heavy traffic towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe said, the exponential growth and global competitiveness of football in Africa has resulted in substantial interests from major African and international broadcasters in African football. SABC has been participating competitively in the CAF media rights bids. CAF welcomes them as partners, joining a number of CAF's media rights holders. We are committed to ensuring that CAF's competitions, including its broadcast products, are world-class. Powerball and Powerball Plus is on a roll with a massive 93 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. That's right. Play Powerball for an estimated 42 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 51 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
Culture Cultural Urban Festival Africa will conclude the weekend in style with an exhilarating brand of football. The City of Roses will vibrate as Batabane Bandwa battles it out with Amakosi. This is the inaugural Kufa Cup. Who will conquer the 90 minutes at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein? Witness the incredible Kufa Cup clash between Maruma Gallants and Kaizer Chiefs this Sunday 13 October at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. You can also catch it everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro, Spar, BP and Shell. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, you know the story. Every Friday we have a fireside chat. We invite someone and I have a cool chat with them. And maybe it's not a literal fireside chat, but you get the vibe. You know exactly what it is. No real agenda. We just chat about a whole range of issues that come our way. And you can participate as well. So we've been doing this for the last couple of months. Didn't do it for the last 3 weeks because, as you know, I was away. Toronto, Montreal, London. But I'm back in town, and the very first guest, do I even call the person a guest? Because fireside chats are really about chommies, I would think, isn't it? Is Zubaida Jaffer. She's with me. She's online. Zubaida, I appreciate you giving off your time. And, welcome to the National Pulse. But you're chilling with me on the fireside chat.
It's a pleasure, Ashraf, to be here.
Thank you. I know when I was abroad, I think, or maybe just before I left, you had a launch of your latest book in Cape Town, and I think you WhatsApped me, but clearly I could never be there. Tell us about that as a starting point. What was that about?
Well, I've just launched a book called Becoming Charlotte. It's my 4th book, and the idea is that the more comprehensive researched book was called Beauty of the Heart, which tells the story of our first female graduate, Charlotte Manye Matleke. But I soon realized that, the story was not going to sort of be taken into the hearts of South Africans if it wasn't written as a story that can appeal to everyone. So I've written Becoming Charlotte as an imaginative piece, 1800 South Africa, and sketched around her life, and it shows how much effort was made to pursue the education train. So I'm really delighted to have launched this.
And I hope it's been well received. I mean, it's a few weeks now, right?
It's been very well received, Ashraf. We had on a stormy, rainy Wednesday afternoon, we had 200 people packing the launch. And here in Wynberg, in my hometown, always like to launch my book first in my community. And it was very, very, very uplifting, very uplifting.
Well, I suppose there's clearly something about Charlotte, but there's something about Zubaida herself in terms of, your ability to churn out books and written pieces and other pieces of journalism, and you've done that consistently over a long, long period of time. So, it's in many ways, it's a pat on your back as well. Congratulations to you.
It's now 44 years, Ashraf, 44 years. Well, from when I formally became a journalist in 1980. It's 44 years. Imagine.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's flown like that.
Well, we've been describing you on air as, we said, the journalist, activist, and author. Would that be accurate now, or would you change something in terms of that description?
I think it's still accurate. I do think that my journalism isn't, news journalism anymore. So it's not all the time. It's when I feel I want to write something. I have my own website and I post it there. But I still see myself essentially as a journalist, author, and activist.
And I mean, do you put all three into one? Because, I mean, that alone, I think from an audience point is like, can a person be a journalist and an author and an activist in one shot? You clearly are the example of that, but can you do that?
What do you mean by can I do that? I have done it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, there would be many others who'd argue to say, be the journalist and not the activist, for example, right? You can't be both. Clearly, you've done that, and then now you moved on to writing books as well, and you've done that for a good few years now. As you said, your fourth book.
Yeah, no, I don't buy the. I do feel that one must be distant. You must be, you must take a step back when you do your journalism. But that's the same for my book writing. You take a step back, and you can't be completely involved in the story. But no, I think I'm not putting it correctly. But you have to take a step back. But that you have a personal view, that you have a viewpoint, you have a life viewpoint. Everybody has that. And I think that with the tumult in the world today and with the, the craziness that's going on, we are really seeing that there's so much in journalism that we have to reconsider and think about. Because what is the truth, and are we getting the truth, and do we not, is the truth not shaped by what we perceive, so ourselves as individuals? So yeah, there's a lot going on at the moment.
Well, maybe give us an example of that when you say there's so much in journalism that one has to think about or maybe rethink about. What have you been doing some thinking and rethinking?
Well, look, especially with the Middle Eastern situation, the biases are so obvious. If you often listen to CNN or you listen to the BBC, which we always thought was the doyen of objectivity, as taught to us. You have to then go to Al Jazeera to get the full story. So it has thrown that into our faces. It's forced us, even though we always had a sense of it, but now it's very, very stark.
How do you therefore navigate, news on social media? And I'm talking about Twitter or the X platform in particular, because yes, you write for the BBCs and the CNNs and the Al Jazeeras. I certainly follow the Middle Eastern issues, and then you follow, the Haaretz newspaper in Israel and many others too, right? Arab Times and so on and so on. But you sometimes battle to understand, what's the real story, and then on top of all of that, you also get maybe 100 activists from all different sides pushing out a certain view. How, I don't see you that active on the Twitter or the X platform. I certainly am. But when you do, and if you do, how do you navigate that in terms of, deciding what for you is the truth and what is just crazy propaganda spin?
I read a lot. I may not be sort of active on Twitter, but I certainly get a lot of messages from friends, and I read. I look at the stuff on a cross section of publications and televisions, and so I do feel sometimes when I look at it, I think, okay, am I just looking at this and seeing what I want to see, or what's going on here? But the best I can do at this point is to gather as much of the facts as possible, and then make up my mind, having gathered as much of the facts. But we mustn't also be completely closed to new thoughts or new views of what is going on. But currently, this crisis that we have, it's so stark. I'm not sure whether one can say, oh, well, we can, support this and then we can't support that. It's just awful. It's just it's illogical. I mean, it's got no logic at the moment.
What
So
I want
it's beyond logic.
Okay, I want to ask you about South Africa as well, but while we're at it, well, let me just remind the audience, we're chatting to Zubaydah Jaffer, and we made the point, she's the journalist, she's the activist, she's the author, she's all those things, and she's got a great sense of purpose about her life too, which we'll touch on all of that. Now, as always, when we have these fireside chats, maybe time for 3 calls and a few WhatsApp messages as well. So do you want to engage with Zubaydah? You can by calling into 086 000 2032. You got that? 086 000 2032. Otherwise, a WhatsApp text or voice note 0614 104 107. And you can also post a comment on our Facebook page as well as the SAFM Radio Twitter or X platform page. And you can just tag me as well. Just questions or comments to Zubaydah Jaffer. So, Zubaydah, before we get on to other things, just what for you is the solution around the Middle Eastern crisis?
If I had that solution, Ashraf, if any of us had, I think then we would be pushing for that solution. But if we don't have people on coming forward on both sides and saying we want a solution or we want peace. There were many moments now in the last few months where we thought there was going to be peace, or there was going to be some kind of settlement, but then it didn't happen. So I think the first thing is that everybody must realize how crazy this is, how absurd it is. And I think the Nobel Prize today is kind of saying something about that. It's saying that they've given the prize to the group of survivors of the nuclear bomb.
Yes.
That was, given the peace prize to them, and it's to make us think, how close are we to that scenario again?
We certainly pray. We pray that certainly doesn't happen. I mean, you're quite right about those people, and I think they're doing great work around awareness around the nuclear bomb that you refer to, those that were victims of it, right? What I'll do is I want to talk about other things about you, like more personal things about your own journey and what makes Zubaydah Jaffer tick even now, having been in the media space for 40 years or whatever it is that we spoke about. So we'll get to that right after this.
Mubango returns for an explosive new season on SABC2. A renaissance of new beginnings, intrigue, and drama with old enemies and new characters. Catch the rebirth season of Mubango every Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. on SABC2 or stream it on SABC Plus. Mubango, ukovela panda. SABC2.
South African Airways is expanding in the DRC. We now offer direct flights from Johannesburg to Lubumbashi, the heart of the DRC's mining hub. Our convenient arrival time allows seamless connections to key regions like Ndola and the Copper Belt, opening up new growth opportunities. Traders can benefit from our generous baggage allowance, while SAA's superior aircraft belly capacity ensures your cargo reaches most parts of Congo on the same day. Book now at flysaa.com or contact your travel agent. South African Airways, connecting Africa to the world, one flight at a time.
The Desert Warriors are looking for their third victory to maintain a 100% winning record. Togo are fighting for their first win of the 2 draws in their opening 2 matches. This is the top of the table contest in Group E. Experience the journey to Morocco in the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Algeria versus Togo on Thursday, 10 October at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Yes, certainly talking to Zubaydah Jaffer, and we'll certainly do that up to 6 o'clock. As always, we'll take maybe 2-3 calls if you're up for it. Otherwise, if you're keen to just listen, that's fantastic. But WhatsApp voice notes are also welcome. 0614 104 107. What questions would you like to put to Zubaydah Jaffer? Now, Zubaydah, I want to ask you about other things, right? But let me just talk about the 4 books you've now put out, because I don't want to forget that. So you mentioned about Charlotte Maxeke, right? And now you've done the second book around her. Clearly, there's something about her that absolutely enthralls you, I would think, isn't it?
Ashraf, she persevered under very difficult conditions and never lost sight of her dream, never lost sight of where she wanted to go. And she did, at a certain point in her life, decide that she wanted to go abroad and study. Because look, universities, nobody of color could study here. So it was only for whites, and it was mainly for white men in the 1800s. So she had this vision and idea of what she wanted to do, and to see how her story unfolds in that time, when the land was stripped away, when all these challenges were facing South Africans then. It's an inspirational story. It's an inspirational story that can keep people gripped and understand that anything is possible, and that's what really that has touched me about her life.
Okay, well, you certainly have touched us with delivering what you've just done in terms of the 2 books that gets us having a better understanding of a person beyond just having a hospital named after her. But I think that's why it's very, very opportune, which then gets me to think about you and what is it that drives you, Zubaydah?
Ashraf, I was a sickly child. And so there was always, I was the only one in the family of my 6. We were 6, and I was the sickly one, always in and out of hospital. And so I had no sort of sense how my life would unfold, and that I would be getting myself, I would eventually end up in many dangerous situations and come through it. But I think there was because of the time, and I don't say it's just about me, it's often the time that you live in and the time that you emerge as a young person that influences, the choices that you make. And I was exposed, I would say, in my family, through my religion and my parents, their awareness, my sister's activism. I was exposed to the sort of need to end apartheid and to fight against apartheid. And so by the time I came into the profession, it was 1980, and I just happened to be at my first job at the time, and then all this was happening in Cape Town, all over the country, but in Cape Town especially. And so I found myself, steeped in all of that, in the writing about it. So, yeah.
And how did you feel at that time? So, you in this new position, a young person at the time, and you're right. I mean, Cape Town, I think, famous for, the purple shall govern, that level of activism that took place in that city that people tend to forget about. How then did you adjust when you say, like, oh my goodness, I'm the journalist, I'm this young journalist, but I'm in the midst of history here?
I think I was still naive. I was still young. I was 22 years old, but I understood that what was happening around me was groundbreaking, and the fact that I was having the opportunity to write about it for me was very, I really treasured it. That anything else was going to happen alongside that didn't really struck me. I didn't really know the amount of danger that I was in. So, not too consciously, although people were being killed and were being arrested as journalists. And so when I did the story on people who were shot in Elsis River, in Lavender Hill, in Bishop Lavis, in areas, retreat. I did that story in July 1980. It completely changed my life. It led to me, firstly, being exposed to all these people whose families of people who had lost their lives, shot by the police. There were at that stage about 46 that we knew about. And then it led to my detention and torture. And as I said, my life never ever being the same again. So that one story, I would say, impacted and has impacted on my life over many years.
And when you were detained and you were being tortured, I mean, what was going through your mind?
I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't understand why this was all happening. Subsequently, when I looked back, and now when I look back, I realized that there was the belief, the security police believed that I was taking instructions from the ANC, and I was part of the underground, which I was not. And so they wanted to get from me names of people. And I must tell you, if you're in that situation, it's an awful situation, then I came to a point where I was like trying to think, what names can I give them? What names can I say? Because I must just give them names, In the end, I was unconscious. They beat me. They gave me drugs to make me feel I was going to die. And so I didn't really know. I mean, the second time when I was detained in 1985, I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But I promise you, that time I just didn't really. I was just, frightened and terrified out of my mind. That's all I was.
All right. I want to ask you about the state of South Africa as well, but I'll get you a few minutes to pause because we're going to have sports. We're going to have the crossing for markets as well as we normally do around this time. But first things first, it's the news headlines. It's 5:30. Here's Greg.
Quick look at the headlines. The National Director of Public Prosecution says she's aware that the public wants to see high-profile people prosecuted and convicted for state capture cases. The case against former Transnet executives has been postponed for the defence to prepare for pre-trial conferencing at the High Court in Johannesburg. And the partial remains of a climber are believed to have been found on the north face of Mount Everest. More on that story and other news at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The M2 eastbound has a crash near Risick Street exit. The R21 southbound has a crash before the R24 Airport Interchange. And the N1 southbound has a crash on the off-ramp to Brakfontein Road. In Durban, the N2 northbound has a stationary truck before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction. And the M19 westbound has a crash before Dunkeld Road exit. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound queuing towards the N1 Kubik interchange. Helen Suzman Boulevard inbound is queuing towards Batencross Street. Heavy traffic reported on multiple routes through the CBD area, so expect delays. And Kubik Road northbound has heavy traffic towards the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Right, let's talk. Are we talking? We must be talking Bafana first.
Absolutely. And Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce says that they cannot afford to underestimate Congo Brazzaville based on the challenges that they've been going through. Congo arrived in Gqeberha yesterday, but not without challenges. And Congo only managed to leave Brazzaville yesterday morning due to some internal and immigration issues. But Bruce says that he doesn't want to read too much into their challenges.
There were a lot of things happening in Congo in the beginning of the week. I think we could make no bigger mistake than thinking now that that team will be influenced by what happened and will not be ready for the game. A professional player always wants to win the game. Also those players from Congo, be sure. They know also that yes, they need to win, or they need to have a good result, certainly here in South Africa, to still have a chance to qualify. And which African players don't want to be qualified for AFCON? So it's up to us to be ready tomorrow.
Kickoff is at 7 p.m. There's also some women's football to look forward to in terms of the Hollywood Bets Super League. And Mamelodi Sundowns ladies defender Bambanani Mbane says that a win against University of Pretoria in the 20 derby is crucial, as it will get them closer to another Hollywood Bets Super League title. The Brazilians face their neighbours on Saturday at the UJ Soccer Stadium in Soweto. Victory of the defending champions will leave them just a point shy of retaining their trophy with 2 games remaining. And Mbane says that even though they won their last meeting, clashes against Tuks are always tricky and past results mean nothing.
It's on a derby. It's tricky. Yes, it's winning the last, but look at results the last as nothing. It's going to be a tough one. Le ezawudinga ukuthi i-Sundowns ladies switch on, because i-3 points ebaluleke kakhulu le uyayibona. So xa sinofumana le 3 points and then ke ngoku negame elandelayo esisitsho nawo sidinga i-draw. So uyabona le game le is very important nje ukuthi iyadinga ukuthi whether siyathanda okanye sithanda i-3 points kumele sibuye nayo.
She's just basically saying that the 3 points are needed on that day so that they can just wrap things up in their next game. In cricket, the Proteas women are in action tomorrow against Bangladesh with the hopes of booking their spot in the Women's T20 World Cup semi-final. There are 3 teams with 4 points, and 2 of them, England and West Indies, square off, meaning that one of them will stay on 4 points. So South Africa definitely needs to win to advance to the semis. And Proteas women wicket-keeper Sinala Jafta says that they will be focused on their own game rather than the pressure of winning the match. Meanwhile, Cricket South Africa announced the SA Under-19 women's squad that will take on Ireland in a 5-match Youth T20 International Series from the 28th to the 1st of November. The matches will be held at the Groen Kloof Oval in Tshwane, marking a key step in the team's preparation for the ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup 2025 that is set to be hosted in Malaysia. The 15-player squad includes 7 players who were part of South Africa's squad at the inaugural ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup in 2023. Anything's off with tennis. Novak Djokovic beat Jakub Menchik 6-7, 6-1 and 6-4 to claim the last spot in the Shanghai Masters semi-final. The Serb, who is aiming for a 100th singles title in Shanghai, will next face world number 7 Taylor Fritz. On that note, it's a wrap from my side.
All right, so, I mean, just state the obvious. I know, well, hold it. I was going to say goodbye for the weekend, but you have a show coming up just now.
Yes, now from 7.
What's on the show? Are you still going to work it out?
So we're talking all things building up to the Proteas women tomorrow, and also just talking about the Banyana squad that was just named this week that is going to face England and Denmark, and also just previewing the Hollywood Bets Super League tomorrow.
It was super productive to me because, of course, he works tomorrow on TV as well. Oh, my goodness. I don't know how you do it, but you clearly do it.
We got to do it.
Well, have a great working weekend. That's all I can say.
You too.
TUT Matsatsansa ladies are hungry for victory to climb up the ladder, but Royal AM have an incredible game plan to triumph and keep their top half position. This is the Hollywood Bets Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matsatsansa ladies FC versus Royal AM ladies on Saturday, 12 October at 11:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. Cultural Urban Festival Africa will conclude the weekend in style with an exhilarating brand of football. The City of Roses will vibrate as Bakhabane Bantwa battles it out with Amakhosi. This is the inaugural Kufa Cup. Who will conquer the 90 minutes at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein? Witness the incredible Kufa Cup clash between Maruma Gallants and Kaizer Chiefs this Sunday, 13 October at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. You can also catch it everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro, Spar, BP, and Shell. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Jimmy, the markets are closed, I know, but you still have news around some of the big market issues. So go ahead and tell us, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Markets are closed in South Africa. They did close out in the green, as did most of the markets around the world. I think the only markets that are in the red on today's trading day was the Sydney ASX in Australia, as well as the Shanghai markets in China. The Hong Kong markets were in the green. The Nikkei was in the green in Tokyo. All European markets were in the green, as were US markets, or as are US markets rather, because they are still trading. As I said, the South African markets as well, also gaining almost a full percent there, with industrials up 0.25%, resources up 0.7%, but financials up 1.7%. So that was a really good day for financial stocks today. If we look at some of the commodities movements, the gold price is improving. It's up about 1.4% at $2,658 or so. Brent crude still below $80, worryingly close to $80 though. Platinum and palladium pricing also improving there slightly. We've got a couple of data points to look forward to next week. We got CPI out of the US this week, and we got producer price inflation today that gave the markets a bit of a boost. Next week we have CPI data out of everywhere else. So the UK, the European region, South Africa's on that list, China's on that list. So there's a lot of data around inflation that's going to be coming through next week that we're going to look at, which will probably give us a clearer direction around what we could potentially see from a rate cut conversation. But from this week's perspective, it looks like it's been a good week. We wrap up the week with a look at the currencies. The rand 17.37 against the dollar, 1 British pound 22 rand 72, 1 euro 19 rand and 3 cents, 1 Australian dollar 11 rand 74. So the rand fighting back against all of those major currencies to close out today in positive territory. We take the win for the week, and we come back next week, and we hope we can do it again.
Absolutely, and we'll make a note. We will talk to you on Monday for sure. Perfect. Jimmy, have a great weekend.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, let's get back to the fireside chat that we have every Friday, and today it's the turn of Zubaydah Jaffer, so activist, journalist, and author, and does publisher as well, by the way. So much more that she does, with a fascinating story that she has, and she's certainly telling us as well. So, Zubaydah, let's then talk about. So I said I'll talk about South Africa, but before I get to that, right? I'm very interested in knowing what is your purpose.
My purpose, and I've kind of it's become clear as I've gone along, because I think from in the 80s and the 90s, or some of those times, as younger, I was just kind of responding, but what I essentially believe is I have a dream of a just and fair South Africa, where each one of us can reach our full potential. I think that is, and my purpose, I would say that is my dream, but my purpose is to give hope to those who cross my path. I would like to give hope, because without hope, little is possible. And I know what it is to be in a hole. There was a time when I couldn't find a job in Cape Town because of my activist history. And so, in fact, it was many years. So I recognize it, and if I can see people need help, and if I can help, I do.
And how do you give hope?
How do I?
How do you give hope when you connect with people? What do you do? What do you tell them? Because people have different stories naturally, right?
Yeah, it's all very different. One can't generalize. But I find most times people just want a listening ear. They just want to be able to say how they feel, and to know that one affirms that. And if there's a direction you can point them into, then and where they could get some more help, then I do that. But most times it's people's cry for longing for, affirmation and belief in themselves. And we have so much on the one hand that tells us that we are not good enough, and we haven't been good enough. Apartheid's entire message was that we're not good enough. And so to turn that around, the work that has to be done has to be turned around at the level of the mind, because, and Steve Biko had said that we cannot carry on we cannot succeed if people don't believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't understand their potentiality, you know?
Interesting you're talking about, giving hope or championing hope, right? I mean, you have a fascinating story that I'd like you to tell us about with a person called by the name of Adolf Faro, right? Tell me about that.
When I a few weeks ago, I was on a radio, also on an interview, and then I spoke about my new book. I spoke about the fact that I was going to have a launch soon. I didn't give a date, but I just spoke about it. And then after the interview, the radio people called me and said that a listener had called in and that he said that he was the brother of one of the people who had been shot in 1980. Now just think about this. This is now 2024.
Sure.
And this man is now calling to say he's the brother of one of those people I wrote about who was shot, John Faro, who is 17 years old. And it's not the first time this is happening, but anyway, this particular story was so amazing. This man phoned the radio station. I then asked them to give me his number when they told me. I contacted him and he said to me he'd like to come to the book launch in Wynberg. He's in an old age home in Elsies River, but he'd like to come to the book launch. Of course, we were talking about that time and what had happened. And so he and his nephew came to the book launch on the 18th of September. And I've got a photograph with him and I've connected with him. And he sent me a beautiful message, which I hope you can share. I have shared it with you.
I think I do. So what was it like actually meeting up with him then in person? Before I want to play the message. What was it like to meet up?
It was so special. It was so special because I couldn't believe that I was 22 years old when I did that story, and that the story's been following me around. So here at this book launch, which was a very special focus on Charlotte Maxeke, here this man comes. And at first he didn't have transport and all the complications. And then I called somebody in Elstriver and they said they'll help. But eventually he made his own arrangements. He came with his nephew. And there he was, and such a lovely man, and I was so moved, so deeply, deeply moved.
Well, he was moved as well. I tell you what, let me play the soundbite that he shared with you, because if you think that we always do this. We sometimes think we don't make an impact, and maybe Zubeida doesn't. Maybe she forgets about it. Here's a good example of the power of impact and the power of influence, right?
I said to my mom at that time, Mom, this is such a young journalist. Isn't she afraid of being killed by the police like the police are shooting the other youngsters? And my mom still said, Man, hulle is koerantmense, hulle is oral. And the comforting words you said to my mother and us as a family, as you were doing the interview with us, you said, all this, we must take heart of all this what they are doing now. It will come to an end one day. And that is the hope you gave us and our family. Thank you, Zubeida.
Well, there you are, Zubeida. I mean, yeah. Comment? Listening again to that voice note?
Well, I'm really, really, really so affected by it, and I feel it's a lesson for me. It reaffirms my belief that we all can do many small things and those many small things become big things together down the line. It's not big things that you do. It's the words that you use, is what you say to one another. It's if you smile, as if you make an effort to empathize. And, you know, I just feel that we may think that we are in a crazy world at the moment, that we're having a hard time, and we are. But at the same time, do you give up on your dream? Do you give up on your vision? Charlotte didn't give up on her vision, and she achieved tremendously. And, you know, the African, I was just, when I was preparing for this interview, just came to me that African-American writer Langston Hughes in 1951, he wrote a poem that's called What Happens to a Dream Deferred.
Okay, wow.
What happens if you give up on a dream? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it sink? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? And he wrote this at the time just before the civil rights movement, when people had lost a lot of hope in the US. African Americans had lost a lot of hope, you know. And I just feel that I don't think one must defer your dream. You may not see it necessarily in your lifetime, but you have to work towards something that is uplifting and forward moving. You have to do that. Otherwise, what is life worth? It's not, you know, if you're waiting for that nuclear bomb to go off to put us all out of our misery.
It's like it'll come on its own time. You can't plan for that, yeah.
But the nuclear bomb is not going to go off in 10, 20 years' time. You haven't used the time that you had effectively to make a difference,
Well, there you are. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I want to ask you about, I want to ask you to give a shout out to maybe a young South African who's going places, someone that well, you're effectively opening the door to giving them a seat at the table by just giving them a shout out on a national platform like this. But just think about that. We'll get to that right after this.
Bafana and the Congolese troops are all looking for their second victory in Group K. Bafana Bomzanzi Africa say they will take full control at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, while the green, yellow and red want to raise their country's flag with 3 points. This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the journey to Morocco, South Africa versus Congo Brazzaville on Friday, 11 October at 6:30 p.m. on SABC2 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The ring personnel has been summoned to the Jade International Boxing Festival at Thaba Mshade in Burgersfort this Friday night. WBF Intercontinental Champion Mzansi's Agani Sambu collides with John Chua of Tanzania, while South Africa's Nosiwakase Dube confronts Chimwemwe Banda of Malawi in the International Female Junior Bantamweight bout. Meanwhile, Sfiso Tongane from Limpopo battles it out with KZN's Kanaiseni Mbogazi in the junior lightweight. Prince Ndlovu clashes with Congolese tough rock Blaise Mujinga. Catch more electrifying bouts of the Jade International Boxing Festival this Friday, 11 October at 7 p.m. Live on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 and SABC2 at 10:30 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, chatting to Zubaydah Jaffer, and besides many other things, she's the author of 4 books, but 2 in particular linked, around the life story of the person who's where a hospital is named after her. I'm talking about Charlotte Maxeke, right? But let's talk about other names, of course, right? So when I asked you, is there a young South African who impresses you so much for you to talk about him or her on air?
Yes, I'd like to send a shout out, as you said, to Linda Fakisi. Linda was a student of mine. She became a journalist, and then currently she's in journalism education in Johannesburg. She is doing her PhD, and she is from a very small town in the Eastern Cape, on the border of the Eastern Cape and Free State, and she's currently a young mother. So, and she sings. So I think of her when I think of Charlotte, because it was Charlotte's voice that took her and opened doors for her. So you never know, what is possible.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So there we are. We know about her, right? So there you are. I'm glad you mentioned her. What for you is your greatest gift? I mean, it seems apparent, but it may not be so. What in terms of your gift or skill set that just sets you apart?
Well, I don't know, but okay. I have been fortunate, and I just want to read 3 lines from Shabir Banupai, the South African Sufi poet. Mm-hmm. And I think it captures, I've been fortunate to be given this gift, God-given gift. Shabir said, he wrote this recently, he said, miners produce tons of rocks to access a small amount of gold. They do not let the rocks distract them. They focus on the gold. They bear no ill will to the rocks. They never contemplate their non-existence. So all these things are there. All these things, I see all the awful things. I'm not denying that there's awful things, but I focus on the gold and trying to get, all of us to a point where we see that we are pure gold, because that's what we are. You're not, God didn't put us on earth, He put us on earth to actuate ourselves. Yeah. And to find the best version of ourselves. So, and everyone has got talents and skills, but their situations are just so different and difficult sometimes.
Very true. What for you then is the gold in South Africa right now as a country?
The gold is always always in each person, the interpersonal. Ubuntu, we know a person is a person through other people. So I always say to people, you may leave your job, you may not be here long, you may not be long in your job, but what do you take with you from that job? You take the effort you've made with your interpersonal relationships. You take that effort, that always goes with you wherever you go. And yet people don't want to put work at that. They don't care. They're not kind, or they're not helpful, or they just don't often understand. It's not understood that in the end, what you carry with you through the years as the level of your interpersonal contact. And I really learned that from my dad. I learned that from my family, that you have to take time. You have to take time and be prepared to hear others.
Yeah, very true. And what are your thoughts about the state of South Africa right now?
I'm deeply concerned at one level. Of course, won't be deeply concerned, if you see people being a crookery, you see the kind of crookery, but also if you see the way people are scratching in bins and being hungry, and it's just, I can't actually stand it. But a lot of the issues that we have and a lot of the problems is fixable. We can do something about it. Many people are trying to do things about it. There are those who want to kind of break us down and tell us how awful we are. But I think we are an amazing people. We have an amazing life experience, and we have to draw on all of that and carry ourselves forward, you know. So see so much beauty around and so much effort. So maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but I can't believe that all this is not going to, you know, keep us, you know, moving. I mean, just one example. Charlotte was the first female graduate in 1901. We never had a native female graduate in 1901. And today we have, from the record, the stats show that from 2000 to 2020, we have qualified over 2 million women graduates.
It's amazing.
Now,
wow.
we don't know that. But I really look for that stat, those statistics. And I really struggled with it, and eventually that's what I could get.
Well, you got 2 million. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you make me feel a lot better about South Africa and where we are right now, which is fantastic, because we got about 30 seconds to wrap up the show. And here's the last thing, right, to you. Many people would love to share a seat at the table with you, but who would you like to share a seat at the table with?
I'd love to sit with Tsitsi Dangaremga of Zimbabwe, the writer from Zimbabwe, or Chimamanda Adichie, both writers, Chimamanda from Nigeria. Those two, if I could have an opportunity to kind of sit with them, I think they are brilliant writers. And it would be such an honor.
Well, maybe they're going to hear you and say, well, they want to meet you. So maybe that will happen. You never know. Be careful what you wish for. Let's leave it at that. It's been great. It's been great talking to you, and thanks for giving off your time and sharing this seat at the table in terms of the fireside chat. Of course, I've literally have shared a seat at the table with you as well, as you know that, and a great privilege that doing just that, right? So Zubaida, long may your success continue. Keep on winning for South Africa, for yourself, for your community, for the people of Wynberg, where you come from in Cape Town, but definitely for the people of South Africa. You inspire us. So thank you for giving up your time on this fireside chat here on the National Pulse.
Thank you for what you do, Ashraf. Thank you so much.
There we are. Just a simple thank you for what you do. And she's humble. She's done amazing things. Google her if you haven't known everything about her. Zubaida Jaffer. Right now, that's it. It's 6 o'clock. Let's get the news. Here's Greg Hose.
Thank you again, Ashraf. In this news update, Batoy speaks on state capture cases and remains of Everest climber found after 100 years. Good evening. The National Director of Public Prosecution, Shamila Batoy, says she's aware that the public wants to see high-profile people prosecuted and convicted for state capture cases. She appeared before Parliament's Justice